A young man is caught in the middle of a wild animal stampede. He lets out a silent scream, completely overwhelmed by the chaos, but his eyes snap open, revealing it was all just a dream. He sits up in an empty classroom, realizing he slept through his lessons. A quick glance at the clock confirms it's already late afternoon. The school day is over. The hall's now quiet and deserted. Walking home, he smiles, recalling his dream of playing with animals. He dismisses the pleasant thought, believing animals could never like him. Just then, he spots a group of stray cats huddled under a tree, and suddenly, all that self-doubt is replaced by pure, unfiltered joy. But his joy is met with pure, unadulterated feline terror. They scatter in an instant, leaving him reaching for nothing but air. He forces a smile, trying to convince himself he doesn't care. It's a painful pattern that has followed him his entire life. A flashback shows even the gentlest creatures fleeing from his presence. Yeah, even the king of the jungle is apparently terrified of him. He walks on, wondering if he's cursed to be feared by what he loves. Just then, a voice cuts through the rain, calling his name. Arihara. He turns to see a girl from his class, hidden behind her umbrella. He recognizes her as Shishihara, absorbed in a strange, ancient-looking book. She observes that the animals still seem to hate him. Arihara is stunned that she knows about his strange affliction. Her expression shifts to one of deep regret over something from their past. But our boy has absolutely no memory of what she's talking about. A flashback reveals she once cruelly pointed out his curse as a child. Back in the present, she offers a sudden, heartfelt apology. He tries to brush it off, admitting he'd completely forgotten the incident. With the tension broken, Arihara smoothly changes the subject to her book. She lights up, excitedly explaining her love for fantasy and mythical creatures. And in the middle of the rain, they find an unexpected common ground. She seems to hesitate for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Then, she brightens up, suggesting they continue their conversation sometime. But their casual chat is cut short by a sudden blinding flash of light. A complex magical circle materializes right beneath Shishihara's feet. Arihara realizes he's trapped too, watching as she's pulled away by an unseen force. He's completely disoriented, the world dissolving into a blur of light and panic. An invisible barrier erupts from the circle, throwing him backward with brutal force. She screams his name, her hand outstretched in a desperate, final plea. The ground beneath him vanishes, and suddenly his day gets a whole lot weirder. He's in freefall with no idea what just happened or where he's going. His fall ends as abruptly as it began, his eyes wide with shock. He looks up to see not the sky, but a crumbling stone ceiling. Dazed and confused, he tries to make sense of his sudden arrival. He finds himself sitting on a stone altar in an ancient, forgotten chamber. The question echoes in the silence, where in the world is he? His first thought is for Shishihara, calling her name into the empty room. Panic sets in as he desperately searches for any sign of her. But the chamber is empty. She's nowhere to be found. He realizes the magic circle must have transported him here all alone. Then, a flicker of hope as he reaches for his phone. Because of course he does. But his one link to the modern world is completely shattered. With no other choice, he frantically searches the ruins for an exit. His search leads him to a dead end, the path blocked by tons of rubble. He spots a small gap near the ceiling, but it's far too high to reach. Desperate, he scans the chamber for any other way out. And that's when he finds he's not entirely alone. His heart stops, his mind reeling from the grim discovery. He scrambles backward, face to face with a long-dead resident. The horrifying thought hits him. Is this his own inevitable future? But before despair can take hold, a strange sound catches his attention. The sound's origin is a small black cat, staring with unnervingly wide eyes. Arihara spots it atop the rubble, completely baffled by its presence here. The creature's gaze is intense, its expression strangely vacant and unblinking. A cold sweat breaks out as he wonders if this is just a normal cat. Suddenly, the unstable pile of rock shifts and a large slab comes loose. But instead of running away, the cat launches itself directly at him. It latches onto his arm with a painful bite, refusing to let go. He's in shock. His curse of repelling animals has apparently been upgraded to attracts violent ones. The cat lets out a terrifying hiss, its face twisting into a demonic snarl. Arihara immediately starts begging for his life, frantically explaining he's a huge cat fan. But the attack stops, replaced by the gentle press of a paw against his face. Arihara is frozen in disbelief, feeling the soft pads on his cheek. He realizes with dawning horror that it actually feels kind of nice. The cat simply stares, its vacant expression giving nothing away. It then sits on his chest and asks a simple, world-shattering question. Arihara's mind goes completely blank, unable to process what he just heard. The creature seems surprised to find him here, sensing a strange power within him. As he panics about the talking cat, it calmly informs him that it's not a cat. It then leaps effortlessly onto a higher ledge, leaving him stunned on the floor. And before his very eyes, its feline form begins to bubble and transform. The bubbling mass reforms into a large owl, introducing itself as a shapeshifter. It morphs into a rabbit, clarifying that it's not a real animal. Then a corgi, explaining it belongs to a species with unique abilities. It returns to its cat form, admitting this is simply its favorite look. Arihara's brain short-circuits. This is way beyond what his fantasy books prepared him for. The creature ignores his panic, demanding to know who he is and how he got here. It seems to understand the situation even without an answer from him. The shapeshifter deduces he was caught in an otherworld summoning ritual. Our boy can only repeat the term, completely lost in this fantasy jargon. It explains the ritual. A hero is summoned from his world to save this one. Arihara's mind reels, trying to accept the impossible truth of another world. He points to himself, questioning if he's the summoned hero. The very idea seems completely absurd to him. The shapeshifter clarifies that Shishihara was the actual hero. Arihara was just baggage. But it sees something else within him, a unique power he possesses. And so, the creature makes him an unexpected offer. It asks if he wants to team up and escape these ruins together. Arihara is hesitant, questioning why it would choose to help him. The shapeshifter explains that these ruins are crawling with other monsters, and the exit is guarded by the most powerful and terrifying beast of all. Arihara naively asks if they can just talk to the final boss. The shapeshifter clarifies that, unlike itself, most monsters aren't great conversationalists. It then reveals it has been waiting for a human to become its master, and that master, it explains, is a tamer, one with the power to command monsters. The term is completely foreign to our boy. He questions the creature, demanding to know how it knows about this power. His only frame of reference is a character class from a video game he once played, so he's basically an expert. The shapeshifter explains that Arihara's unique power can grant special abilities to monsters. It specifies that his power has the ability to charm monsters, a shocking twist for a boy they usually flee from. The creature asks if any of this is starting to ring a bell. It connects the dots, suggesting his animal-repelling curse is a side effect. Arihara is completely floored by this unbelievable revelation. The shapeshifter explains his power is so overwhelming, animals instinctively flee. The truth hits him like a ton of bricks. His curse was his own unique nature. And that's precisely why the creature wants Arihara to be its master. He slowly begins to process the strange but undeniable logic. He puts it all together. They'll combine their powers to face the final boss. The shapeshifter seems pleased that he's catching on so quickly. But before agreeing, Arihara has one final question for his potential partner. He asks why the shapeshifter is so desperate to escape these ruins. The shapeshifter's gaze lowers, revealing a deeper, more personal motive. It explains that long ago it had a human friend. The memory seems to soften its usually vacant expression for just a moment. It was this friend who taught it language, magic, and the ways of the world. Now, it wants to see the outside world again, but this time with a master. Its eyes hold a genuine longing, a plea for a shared journey. Arihara is stunned into silence by the creature's heartfelt confession, but his shock quickly gives way to a quiet, firm resolve. He agrees, asking what to do, even as the cat warns it could all be a trap. But Arihara smiles, deciding to trust the talking cat he met 5 minutes ago. What could go wrong? The shapeshifter seems satisfied with his unwavering trust. It instructs him to hold out his hand, needing a bit of blood to seal their pact. A single sharp claw gently pricks the tip of his finger. It places its paw on his hand, telling him to focus all his energy there. But Arihara is immediately distracted by the glorious feeling of its paw pads. He quickly shakes his head, forcing himself to concentrate on the task at hand. The creature begins the incantation, forging a bond between man and monster. An ancient contract sealed by blood begins to form between them. A faint glow surrounds them as the pact is officially made. Arihara looks on, his expression a mix of awe and utter disbelief. The shapeshifter announces the contract is complete, and Arihara asks if it's now his familiar. To demonstrate their new bond, the creature tells him to close his eyes. Arihara complies, a little nervous about what's coming next. In the darkness, a faint cat-like shape begins to glow. The creature asks if he can feel its presence, now linked directly to his mind. His eyes fly open in amazement, realizing he truly can sense it. The shapeshifter then points out they haven't even exchanged names yet. It introduces itself as Sif, a name given by its former human friend. Arihara smiles warmly, Introducing himself as Arihara Kaido, he offers his hand and Sif accepts, acknowledging Kaido as its new master. With the introductions out of the way, Kaido turns to the most pressing issue. He asks Sif how they're supposed to escape a room blocked by a mountain of rubble. Sif hops onto his shoulder, explaining it specializes in 3 types of support magic. And without another word, a powerful aura begins to emanate from the tiny cat. Kaido is stunned as that same energy suddenly envelops his own body. Sif reveals its 3rd spell, a powerful body reinforcement enchantment. Kaido clenches his fist, feeling an incredible surge of strength he's never known. His eyes widen in disbelief. This is real, actual magic. Sif explains that this effect is far stronger than anything it could do alone. It seems Kaido's unique power acts as a massive amplifier for his new familiar. So he's basically a walking power-up. Sif explains that with this power, he should be able to leap to the top of the rubble. Kaido can only stare at his fist, completely overwhelmed by the feeling. He feels invincible, ready to take on anything this new world throws at him. But Sif's expression suddenly shifts to pure, unadulterated panic. Because Kaido has already launched himself forward like a human cannonball. He doesn't jump over the rubble. He plows straight through it with one punch. The entire barricade shatters into 1,000,000 pieces from the sheer force. And just like that, the path forward is completely clear. Guess that works too. Kaito looks at his hand, his mind reeling from what he just accomplished. He marvels at the power of support magic, not yet realizing it's his own. Sif is completely stunned, realizing this is no ordinary tamer's power. Kaido recalls a game where tamers fought right alongside their monsters. A wild, game-inspired idea begins to form in his mind. He proudly declares himself a brawling tamer, ready to punch his way to victory. Sif, however, seems less than thrilled with the new, slightly ridiculous job title. But Kaido is filled with a newfound hope, feeling energized by their partnership. He's still worried about Shishihara, but knows escaping these ruins is the first priority. As they venture deeper, a massive sleeping form blocks their path. The creature awakens, revealing itself to be a terrifying, multi-headed dragon. Sif calmly explains that the reason they were summoned is likely due to a demon lord. The grim reality sets in. Shishihara was summoned to fight a demon lord. But Sif cuts in, explaining that Kaido's own magical power is far too strong. He's confused, so Sif clarifies it's about the body reinforcement spell from earlier. The spell's effect was amplified to an unbelievable degree. Sif explains Kaido's power acts as a massive amplifier, multiplying its magic by n times, so he's not just a power-up, he's a cheat code. Sif then asks a follow-up question. Does Kaido have any martial arts experience? He recalls doing karate as a kid and watching pro wrestling with his father. Sif seems to process this, and Kaido asks how it could have possibly known. Sif explains that his punch wasn't just brute force, it showed genuine skill. With this new information, Sif declares that it has confirmed something important. Sif lays out the simple truth. Kaido is far stronger fighting himself than any monster he could command. Kaido is completely baffled, asking what that even means for a tamer. Sif can only confirm that he's definitely not a normal one. The creature hops onto a nearby pillar, ready to move on to their next objective. It explains their next step. They need to choose another monster for Kaito to tame. Kaido's mind immediately goes to building a monster army for maximum firepower. So much for being the main brawler. But Sif shuts that down, explaining that as a new tamer, he can only have one more familiar. The choice must be strategic, as Sif wants a monster that complements its own support magic. It weighs their options, trying to find the perfect partner for Kaido's frontline fighting style. But their planning is cut short by a strange, high-pitched cry from the darkness. The source of the noise reveals itself. A swarm of tiny, bouncing slimes. But one of them is being relentlessly bullied by the others. Sif calmly identifies the creatures, much to Kaido's surprise. But the shapeshifter notices something unique about the one being attacked. It's a mithril slime, a term completely foreign to Kaido. Sif explains it's a rare variant born from absorbing a special ore. This makes it slow and an easy target, even for the weakest monsters. A thoughtful look crosses Sif's face as an idea begins to form. It suggests Kaido should tame the weak, bullied slime, because every hero needs a mascot, right? Sif explains it's a perfect choice for a shield, a strategic asset in a tough fight. Sif reminds him of the body reinforcement spell, the source of his new power. Kaido stands ready, Sif perched on his shoulder like a tiny furry general. Sif explains that with his current strength, the slimes are no threat at all. He just needs to scare them off, and Kaido agrees, though he still looks nervous. With a burst of speed, he launches himself towards the slime swarm. He pulls back his fist, channeling all that amplified magic into a single point. But instead of a gentle shove, he punches the ground with devastating force. The shockwave sends the entire swarm of bullies flying into the darkness. When the dust settles, only the small, frightened mithril slime remains. Sif is once again stunned by his master's overwhelming power. So much for just scaring them off. Kaido turns, hearing a small, questioning cry from behind him. The mithril slime stares up at him, its eyes wide with lingering fear. He crouches down, gently asking if the little creature is all right. The slime responds with a series of happy bounces, its fear forgotten. Sif observes that the slime has clearly taken a liking to its rescuer. Kaido formally asks the creature if it would become his new familiar. Sif announces it's time once again for the blood pact ritual. He places his hand on the slime, beginning the ancient contract. The pact is sealed, and Sif declares the slime is now his second familiar. Kaido holds his new companion, who happily nuzzles against his cheek. Kaido notes how light his new companion is, as Sif explains familiars love being named. He ponders for a moment, trying to find the perfect name for the little creature. He decides on Lime, a simple but fitting name for the tiny slime. The newly named Lime lets out a series of happy chirps, clearly approving of its new title. With his team assembled, Kaido turns to Sif, asking what their next move is. Sif begins to explain their strategy, teaching Kaido to control his power, but a sudden panic washes over Sif's face, a tear welling in its eye. A monstrous, earth-shattering roar suddenly rips through the silent ruins. Sif screams at Kaido to hide, a new, unseen threat rapidly approaching. Kaido ducks behind cover, wondering what could have possibly made that sound. Sif explains this is the strongest, most malevolent creature in the ruins. The source of the roar reveals itself, a monstrous three-headed serpent called Orochi. Kaido can only watch from behind a pillar, frozen in absolute terror. His mind struggles to comprehend the sheer scale of the beast before him. He turns to his companions, his voice trembling as he asks what it is. The sight of the monster is enough to drain all the color from his face. Sif lays out their grim situation. There's no escape, only the path forward. It reveals the Orochi was once a servant of the demon lord himself, so just a casual Tuesday encounter. But Sif reminds him he's not alone. With their combined power, they have a chance. Kaito's response, however, is a simple, honest admission of pure fear. His mind shatters, screaming that he can't fight a monster like this. He collapses against the pillar, completely defeated by the overwhelming terror. But Sif tells him that feeling fear is not something to be ashamed of. It explains that true strength comes from the will to live, even when terrified. Kaido realizes that without Sif, he would have died alone in that first room. Just then, Lime leaps from his shoulder with a determined little cry. The tiny slime suddenly transforms, hardening into a solid mithril shield on his arm. A new resolve fills him. He refuses to die here, and he won't let his new friends die either. And more than anything, he needs to find Shishihara and make sure she's safe. With his mind made up, he rises to his feet, ready to face the impossible. Sif asks if he's ready, and Kaido confirms that his fear is gone. With newfound courage, he charges forward, ready to follow Sif's command. Sif unleashes the body reinforcement spell, channeling immense power into its master. Kaido leaps past the colossal serpent, aiming to break through its flank. But as he passes, he notices the Orochi is already wounded and bleeding. He lands on the other side, his face a mask of pure confusion. He realizes the monster hasn't moved at all since they first arrived. The horrifying reason becomes clear. It was busy feasting on other monsters. Sif screams a warning for him to watch his step as he runs. Kaido sprints through the gruesome carnage, the Orochi still lost in its bloody meal. But the Orochi's eye snaps open, its gaze locking onto the intruder. Its massive tail whips around in a devastating arc aimed right at Kaido. Sif screams a desperate command telling him to jump for his life. Kaido launches himself into the air as the ground below him shatters. He lands, but Sif immediately warns him of another attack from his left. He leaps again, landing himself a front-row seat to the inside of its mouth. The horrifying realization of his fatal miscalculation dawns on his face. But just then, Lime lets out a determined cry, ready to spring into action. The tiny slime launches itself from Kaido's arm, stretching like a living rope. It latches onto a high pillar, pulling its master away from the serpent's jaws. Lime's heroic save yanks Kaido skyward, his expression a mix of shock and relief. He swings past the snapping jaws of the Orochi, narrowly avoiding becoming a mid-air snack. Kaido sticks the landing, losing a shoe but keeping his life as the monster glares from the shadows. Sif praises Lime for the clutch save, the little slime puffing up with pride on Kaido's shoulder. The reality of his near-death experience hits him like a ton of bricks, his face a mask of pure shock. His entire body trembles uncontrollably, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving pure terror in its wake. His legs give out from under him, the fear so intense he can barely stand. But Sif refuses to let him quit, reminding Kaido that he's not fighting this battle alone. Lime chimes in with a courageous squeak, ready to protect its new master no matter what. Bolstered by his companions, Kaido forces himself back to his feet, ready for round 2. He grits his teeth, his resolve hardening into pure focus. Sif screams at him to keep moving, to never stop running. Kaito lets out a defiant roar, sprinting for his life down the corridor. The Orochi retaliates, spewing a torrent of black, corrosive poison. The deadly spray narrowly misses him, splashing against the stone floor. The ground sizzles and melts where the vile liquid makes contact. Sif panics, screaming that the poison almost touched its precious fur. Kaido realizes that even if he escapes, the beast could just follow him. So much for a clean getaway. Enraged, the Orochi begins to thrash wildly, smashing the ancient pillars. Sif notes the creature is now in a blind rage, chasing them mindlessly. A sudden wild idea cuts through Kaido's panic. He shouts a new plan: use the pillars as weapons with Lime's help. Lime happily obliges, stretching its body into a long, sturdy pole. He grips his new mithril staff, a look of grim determination on his face. Sif tells him to hold on, then unleashes another spell, Flame Enchantment. The staff ignites, and Kaido swings the flaming weapon with all his might. The flaming staff now serves as a torch, lighting their path forward. Sif gives him a pep talk. Forget common sense and just go berserk. Standard fantasy advice. With a determined shout, Kaido confirms he's ready for whatever comes next. With a final war cry, he drives the flaming staff into a massive pillar. He uses the flaming staff as a lever, putting every ounce of his amplified strength into it. The strain is so immense that the muscles in his arm begin to tear under the pressure. He lets out a scream of pure, unadulterated agony from the effort. But even as the pain threatens to overwhelm him, he grits his teeth. He refuses to let go, knowing that giving up here means certain death. His insane plan becomes clear. He's not just breaking a pillar, he's bringing the whole ceiling down. With a final, desperate roar, he pushes past his body's absolute limits. The sheer force causes his own body to break, blood splattering from the exertion. His eyes are wide with a mixture of shock, pain, and raw determination. Sif screams encouragement, confirming that the ancient ceiling is finally giving way. Sif points the way, screaming that the exit is just ahead. But Kaido can barely feel his own hand, his body screaming in protest. His vision blurs, consciousness threatening to abandon him at any moment. Still, he pushes forward, running through the chaos toward the light. But the Orochi isn't done yet, its head lunging from the darkness. With a final defiant roar, Kaido swings his makeshift weapon one last time. He smashes the last supporting pillar, bringing the entire tunnel down. The resulting explosion sends him flying, the plan a little too successful. His strength gives out, the reinforcement magic vanishing in an instant. But just as he falls, Lime leaps forward with a desperate cry. The tiny slime stretches its body, becoming a living grappling hook. It pulls Kaido clear of the collapse, yanking him toward the exit. The Orochi lets out a final, agonized roar as it's buried alive. Tons of rock and stone rain down, crushing the colossal serpent. The Demon Lord's servant is completely obliterated by the falling debris. Its reign of terror in this forgotten place is finally over. The beast is completely entombed in the very ruins it guarded. Kaito is thrown from the tunnel, landing hard in the dirt outside. He gets to his feet, looking back at the mountain of rubble he created. So much for finding the front door. He looks up at the sky, realizing he's finally, truly escaped. He's completely spent, his body refusing to move an inch. Sif and Lime rush to his side, relieved to find him alive. But Kaito realizes the pain is surprisingly dull. He's just exhausted. His familiars panic, vowing they won't let their new master die here. Just then, Sif senses something in the distance. Other people. As Kaito's consciousness fades, his last thought is of Shishihara. He can only hope that wherever she is, she's managed to stay safe. Sif and Lime immediately run for help, leading a group back to their master. They find a group of adventurers who are stunned by the collapsing ruins. They put 2 and 2 together, realizing this kid just escaped a legendary monster's lair. His consciousness fractures, his last thoughts a jumbled, frantic mess. The exhaustion is overwhelming, pulling him down into a deep, dreamless sleep. He lies unconscious on the ground, a faint smile on his face, finally at peace. The adventurers carry him away, his name echoing from his tiny, frantic companions. And as he sleeps, the story shifts to the one who started it all. Shishihara. She finds herself in a grand throne room, the center of everyone's attention. Dazed and confused, she tries to understand what just happened to her. She looks around at the strange robed figures, wondering where in the world she is. So, a slightly better landing spot than Kaido's. Her gaze lands on the man on the throne, who seems to be addressing her. The king introduces himself, explaining she's been summoned as the chosen hero. Shishihara can only repeat the words, trying to explain she's from Tokyo, Japan. The king, however, has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. His advisor confirms they've never heard of such a place in their world. The entire court murmurs in confusion. Her home is completely unknown to them. But then a sudden, shocking realization dawns on the king's face. He declares that she must be an inhabitant from another world entirely. The throne room erupts in chaos at the impossible revelation. The king bows his head, admitting their ritual failed and accidentally summoned her. So much for a flawless hero summoning. Shishihara's mind reels, struggling to believe what she's hearing is real. She forces herself to take a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. The court descends into chaos, questioning how they'll face the demon lord now. Shishihara cuts through the noise with one simple question. Can she go home? The king admits with a heavy heart that they have no way to send her back. He can only offer a deep, sincere apology for their monumental mistake. The grim reality sinks in, and Shishihara's hope begins to crumble. But then, a sudden horrifying thought cuts through her despair. She frantically asks if they've seen a boy who was with her. She tells them his name is Arihara Kaido, but the name means nothing to them. She explains he was caught in the summoning circle right alongside her. The king is completely blindsided by this revelation. So they didn't just summon the wrong hero, they summoned a +1. Shishihara's mind races, trying to process the impossible truth. The king flies into a panic, immediately ordering a search party for Arihara Kaido. As the court scrambles, Shishihara can only kneel, lost in regret. She clutches her hands, praying that wherever he is, Kaido is still alive. Meanwhile, our boy's eyes slowly flutter open, his body aching. He finds himself in a strange bed, wondering where he could possibly be now. His two familiars immediately spring to life, overjoyed to see him awake. Kaido manages a weak wave, relieved to see Sif and Lime are safe. The terrifying memory of the Orochi flashes through his mind, confirming it wasn't a dream. So much for a good night's sleep. Sif explains his body nearly gave out, and he would have died if not for their rescuers. The full weight of his near-death experience finally hits him. He asks who saved him, just as a young adventurer bursts into the room. She seems relieved, noting he looks much better than she expected. Sif confirms that this girl is the one who came to their rescue. She introduces herself with a bright smile as an adventurer named Lyra. Kaido bows his head, formally thanking Lyra for saving his life. His two familiars follow suit, offering their own silent gratitude. Lyra brushes off the thanks, more concerned with how he's feeling. He realizes his pain is gone, and she explains a healer used magic on him. So, this world has health insurance, just with more chanting. Kaido is stunned by the concept of healing magic, asking where they are. Lyra cheerfully explains they're in the Hendle kingdom. She points out the window, showing him the Adventurers Guild clinic. Kaido can only repeat the word guild, completely lost in this new world. Sif quickly jumps in, spinning a tale about Kaido being from a remote village. It telepathically warns him to keep his otherworlder status a secret for now. Lyra completely buys the story, her face lighting up with excitement. She reveals she's a country girl too, eagerly offering to be his guide. The conversation turns to their ages, and Kaido confirms he's 17. Lyra proudly declares she's 18, making her his senior by a whole year. So, basically an ancient sage in comparison. But her friendly demeanor is cut short by a sudden, shocked gasp. She suddenly remembers she has a guild request and apologizes for having to leave. With a final wave, she tells Kaido to visit the guild once he's fully recovered. And just like that, she's gone, leaving Kaido alone in the quiet room. He can only stare after her, a bit stunned by the whirlwind of energy that just left. Heeding her advice, he decides to focus on resting and push his worries aside for now. A few days later, Kaito stands outside the Adventurers Guild, ready to explore. He steps into a bustling city, filled with sights he's only ever read about. The streets are teeming with people of all kinds, from witches to beastmen. The reality sinks in. This is undeniably another world, and his school uniform definitely wouldn't fit in. He notices a long line for water, realizing this world doesn't have indoor plumbing. So much for modern conveniences. Sif explains that the strange contraptions are magic tools, a common sight here. Kaido is surprised, realizing this world has its own form of technology. His familiar reassures him that he'll get used to all the new sights in time. With a clear goal in mind, he heads straight for the Adventurers Guild to find Lyra. He pushes open the heavy doors, ready to face whatever lies inside. Kaito is immediately taken aback by the sheer energy of the place. The guild hall is a chaotic hub of warriors, mages, and sellswords. Some adventurers are unwinding with a drink after a long day of questing. Others are at the counter, turning in quests or looking for new work. And on the wall, a board is covered in requests for monster slaying and escort missions. So, a fantasy help-wanted section. Kaito takes in the scene, noting how strong everyone in the guild looks. Just then, a familiar voice calls his name, and he spots Lyra across the hall. She greets him warmly, happy to see that he's back on his feet. With a bright smile, she asks him what he thinks of the place so far. She explains the guild's purpose, a hub for requests that are then assigned to adventurers. Kaito asks if all these intimidating people are adventurers, and Lyra proudly confirms she is one. He's taken aback, realizing the cheerful girl who saved him is a capable warrior. But she quickly turns the praise back on him, amazed he escaped the Orochi's ruins alive. Sif telepathically reminds him to stick to their cover story of simply getting lost. So, getting lost now includes collapsing a mountain on a demigod's pet snake. Lyra's excitement grows, pointing out his rare familiars and declaring him a fascinating tamer. Lyra casually suggests that Kaito could become an adventurer himself. Sif immediately asks how one even goes about joining their ranks. Lyra explains the rules. Be over 15, have the skills, and pass a guild assessment. So, a fantasy job interview with more swords. Sif is completely on board, pointing out they need a way to earn a living. It also sees the guild as a perfect place to train and find new allies. Kaito quietly considers the idea, realizing he has very few options. Just then, 2 more adventurers approach, the woman recognizing Kaito instantly. They introduce themselves as Fran and Gil, the other members of Lyra's party. Kaito bows deeply, formally thanking the entire group for saving his life. Fran admits that they were all pretty shocked by the situation they found him in. Fran admits they were shocked to find a tattered boy near the Orochi's collapsing lair. Gil then turns to Kaito, bluntly asking if he's the one who destroyed the ruins. But he quickly clarifies there's no need to apologize for destroying the place. In fact, he explains, it was just a dangerous monster nest with no real value. Kaito realizes the intimidating warrior isn't angry, just a man of very few words. Just then, a woman in guild attire approaches their table with a polite request. She asks Kaito to confirm his identity, using his full otherworldly name. She then places a hefty bag of coins on the table, calling it a relief fund. So, hazard pay for accidentally stumbling into a boss fight. Kaito is completely floored, questioning why he would be receiving any money. The woman explains it's compensation for him getting lost in a guild-managed area. Kaito tries to refuse, explaining he was just an unlucky bystander. But Sif telepathically tells him to just take the money and run. He bows deeply, accepting the funds but vowing to repay them one day. Though in the back of his mind he has absolutely no idea how. The staffer explains the guildmaster himself wanted to deliver it, but was too busy. With a final bow, she takes her leave, and Kaito thanks her one last time. Gil then asks the million-dollar question, is Kaito going to become an adventurer? Kaito can only admit he doesn't know what his next move is. Lyra watches him, a flicker of concern in her otherwise cheerful eyes. But the moment passes and she grabs his hand, offering to be his personal tour guide. She pulls him along, eager to show him around the city. Fran and Gil wave them off, telling them to enjoy the tour. Fran notes how excited Lyra seems, happy to have found a friend her age. Lyra leads him through the bustling streets of the capital city. A cheerful beastman girl with bunny ears runs up to greet him. He's immediately captivated by the sight of a beautiful elf woman passing by. So much for focusing on survival. Lyra points out their next destination, the guild's training grounds. They find a seat on the bleachers, watching adventurers train below. Down below, a mage unleashes a powerful water spell against a warrior. Both Kaito and Lyra are completely stunned by the raw power on display. Lyra's first order of business is getting Kaito some clothes that don't scream, "I'm not from around here." They spend the rest of the day exploring the city, bonding over some local street food. As night falls, they head back to the inn where Lyra is staying. She bursts through the door with a cheerful shout, announcing their return. Their boisterous entrance is met by a woman with a less than thrilled expression. Her gaze lands on Kaito, her eyes silently asking who this new kid is. Kaito politely introduces himself, explaining he's a recent arrival in the kingdom. The woman introduces herself as Melk, the inn's owner, before questioning his familiars. Sif proudly speaks up, introducing itself as Kaido's shape-shifting familiar. Melk sighs, wondering why her inn only seems to attract tamers with ridiculously rare monsters. Lyra cheerfully asks Melk to let Kaido stay, pointing out the empty rooms. The innkeeper's gaze is intense, silently judging the boy and his familiar. Her eyes seem to pierce right through him, seeing more than just a lost kid. She names her price, 15 days with meals for just 3 copper coins. Sif confirms the price isn't just low, it's practically a giveaway. With the deal made, Melk tells him to pick any room he wants. She then adds that she'll be preparing his dinner as well. Lyra explains that Melk has a unique way of setting her prices for guests. Kaido realizes she must have seen his misfortune and given him a pity discount, so he has a sad puppy discount card. Later that evening, the empty plates show he was at least well fed. Lyra happily confirms that the innkeeper's cooking is the best in the kingdom. Kaito offers his sincere thanks for everything she's done for him so far, but she brushes it off, admitting that she sees a bit of herself in him. She explains her own past, a country girl who came to the city with nothing, and that's why she couldn't just leave him behind. He reminded her of her past self. But she adds that Kaido seemed even more lost and alone than she ever was. Her words hit him hard, leaving him completely stunned and speechless. He quietly accepts her observation, knowing she's not entirely wrong. Later, alone in his room, the grim reality of his situation finally sinks in. He realizes he's been avoiding the truth, refusing to think about his future here. He decides that instead of wallowing in despair, it's time to take the first step. The next morning, Lyra and Sif find him completely lost in thought at the breakfast table. But his silence is broken by a sudden, firm declaration. He's going to become an adventurer. Lyra is completely taken aback by his sudden, out-of-the-blue decision. Kaido explains that worrying won't solve anything. It's time to start doing what he can. Sif wholeheartedly agrees, proud of its master's newfound resolve. Lyra's surprise turns to excitement, promising to take him to the guild the very next day. True to her word, they arrive back at the Adventurers Guild, ready to start his new life. The guild hall is just as chaotic and intimidating as he remembers it. Kaido is already a nervous wreck, even as Lyra reminds him he's just signing up. So much for that steely resolve. Lyra waves cheerfully, heading off to find the guild receptionist. But Sif's ears twitch, its body tensing up with a sudden alertness. Kaito turns, finding himself face to face with a mysterious hooded figure. The stranger's voice is quiet but firm, asking if he is Arihara Kaido. Kaido's blood runs cold. Someone in this world knows his real name. The hooded girl presses him, confirming the name she just spoke. Her gaze is intense, her expression hidden in the shadows of her hood. He's completely frozen, his mind racing to understand how this is possible. Sif sends a frantic warning as Kaido struggles to find the right words. He blurts out a fake name with a pained smile, Jacob Rising. Truly a master of espionage. The hooded girl repeats the fake name, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turns and walks away into the crowd. Kaido is left standing there, wondering if she simply had the wrong person. But the brief, intense encounter leaves him completely rattled. He scans the bustling guild hall, but she has already vanished without a trace. The question burns in his mind. How could she possibly know his real name? The chilling realization dawns that she was specifically looking for him. His thoughts immediately jump to the only other person from his world, Shishihara. Sif asks who the mysterious stranger was, but Kaido is still lost in thought. His familiar praises his quick thinking, noting his cover story might have just saved them a lot of trouble. Sif telepathically mocks his choice of a fake name, but Kaido insists it was a necessary lie. Just then, Lyra returns, completely oblivious to the tense encounter that just happened. She leads him to the counter where a strange crystal orb sits on display. The receptionist explains it's a tool for measuring one's magical aptitude. Lyra reveals she had it brought out for him, a pretest before his official assessment. He takes a deep breath, focusing his energy to channel it into the device. The moment his hand touches the crystal, it erupts in a brilliant flash of light. The entire guild hall seems to notice the sudden, intense glow from the counter. Lyra can only stare in awe, remarking on how beautiful the light is. But the receptionist is completely baffled, unable to identify the strange golden hue. So much for a simple aptitude test. The receptionist pulls out a thick, ancient-looking tome from the archives. She frantically flips through the pages, determined to identify this anomaly. She admits that Kaido's power doesn't fit any known magical system. But then, her eyes land on a single obscure entry in the book. Kaido watches nervously, a bead of sweat rolling down his face. The receptionist reveals the name of his power, pure magic. It's a raw, unfiltered energy, so potent it defies all normal classification. She points out the orb's distinct golden color, a key indicator of its nature. Sif asks if the color is what differentiates this type of magic. A diagram reveals a hierarchy of power, with gold being near the very top. So, our boy didn't just get a cheat code, he got the developer's console. The receptionist reads a grim passage, explaining that in ancient times, humans with this power were sacrificed. Sif confirms it, noting the incredible purity of Kaido's magical energy. Kaido is stunned, unable to process that his curse is actually a legendary power. But the receptionist warns him that this rare ability is not entirely a blessing. She reveals that monsters who know the taste of pure magic still exist in the world. The horrifying truth dawns on Kaido. This is why the Orochi was so obsessed with him. He realizes any monster like it will now hunt him down relentlessly. So he's basically a walking, talking monster magnet. The receptionist tries to calm his fears, assuring him such powerful beasts are rare. Kaito forces a smile, though the terrifying revelation still hangs heavy in the air. He asks Sif if his power is just high-quality monster fuel, enhancing his familiar's abilities. Sif confirms that Kaido's pure magic is the reason its own spells are so powerful. It proudly praises its master while Lime chirps in happy agreement. Kaido is no longer scared, but happy that his power can help his new friends. He turns back to the receptionist, addressing her by name, Mai. With a newfound resolve, he declares his intention to take the adventurer's exam. Mai smiles, revealing that Lyra had already told her about his plans. She slides a registration form across the counter, telling him to fill it out. He gets to work, knowing this is the first real step in his new life. But his pen stops short as he hits a rather significant roadblock. He sheepishly admits he can't read or write the local language. So much for a smooth registration. Mai is completely stunned by his rather inconvenient confession. Lyra laughs nervously, remembering his remote village cover story. Mai offers a simple solution. He can just trace what she writes for him. Lyra steps in, offering to fill out a form for him to copy. Later that day, they return to the inn, registration finally complete. Kaido collapses into bed, completely drained but relieved he managed to sign up. He realizes he has 19 days to learn this world's language and customs. Sif reminds him that while studying is important, he can't neglect his training. The shapeshifter warns him that its training methods are notoriously harsh, but Kaido welcomes the challenge, eager to get stronger for the exam. And so Kaido's brutal training regimen begins in the fields outside the city. He lets out a guttural scream, pushing his body to its absolute limits. With Sif's magic, he lifts a boulder that should be impossible for any human. Sif realizes the combination of its magic and Kaido's pure magic is terrifyingly effective. But the after effects are immediate, his body screaming in protest. Lyra cheerfully offers to bring a healer for his inevitable muscle failure. The days blur into a montage of grueling physical conditioning. Sif proves to be a relentless coach, pushing him well past his breaking point. So much for a gentle, supportive familiar. Lyra even brings in a friend, a young mage, to help with his training. But his training isn't just physical, he also has to learn to read and write. He endures grueling push-ups with a boulder on his back, Sif acting as a tiny furry drill sergeant. He even practices his swings with a massive slab of wood, preparing for any combat scenario. And just like that, the 19 days are over, and the day of the exam arrives. With his familiars on his shoulders, Kaido faces the day with a new steely resolve. He finds himself in a large hall with the other applicants, waiting for the test to begin. He tries to reassure himself, knowing he's done everything he possibly could to prepare. But his confidence wavers as the written portion of the exam is handed out. He struggles to read the card, but manages to identify the character for 5. His crash course in literacy is paying off. Slowly. Sif notes the surprisingly small number of examinees, but Kaido explains the test is held monthly. But their quiet observation is cut short as the doors to the hall suddenly swing open. And speaking of unexpected arrivals, the mysterious hooded girl walks into the room. Sif immediately recognizes her, and Kaido can only confirm that it's the same person. She walks directly to his table, her intentions completely unknown. His familiars immediately go on the defensive, ready for a fight. But instead of a confrontation, she timidly asks if she can sit with him. Kaido, completely thrown off, stammers out a nervous invitation. So much for playing it cool. She takes a seat, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The girl seems flustered, struggling to find the right words to say. Kaido asks if something is wrong, trying to make sense of the situation. She explains she was just surprised by how calm he seemed, leaving Kaido utterly baffled. She asks if Jacob is also here to take the adventurer's exam, but her eyes narrow, questioning if that's really his name. Kaido's mind short-circuits. His terrible lie has been completely exposed. He frantically recalls giving her the ridiculous fake name, Jacob Rising. Even Sif can't help but snicker at his master's terrible attempt at espionage. Kaido forces a smile, confirming the lie and quickly asking for her name. The girl bows her head slightly, apologizing for not introducing herself sooner. She reveals her name is Lifa, showing him her exam card, number 4. Kaido is surprised, asking if she's also trying to become an adventurer. Lifa looks away, admitting she doesn't really want to, but has her reasons. She explains that she's looking for companions, as it's better for adventurers. More specifically, she's searching for someone she can truly trust. His familiars can only watch, completely baffled by this strange girl. She then asks if he's a tamer, and Kaido nervously confirms that he is. Her demeanor shifts, leaning in to ask about his familiar's support abilities. Kaido is completely thrown by her sudden, intense line of questioning, so much for a quiet exam day. His mind races, wondering if she has information about Shishihara. But their strange conversation is cut short by a guild staffer. Lifa stands, calling him Jacob and telling him it's time to go. Kaito follows, realizing he's just been swept along by her mysterious agenda. The applicants are led out from the hall into a large open-air training ground. A single battle-hardened warrior stands waiting for them in the center. His gaze is sharp and unforgiving, sizing up each of the new recruits. He introduces himself as Rick, the proctor, warning them this exam will be severe. The other applicants recognize him as Rick Casing, a legendary gold-rank adventurer. So, no pressure. Rick makes it clear that he will show absolutely no favoritism to anyone here. He explains that trust is the guild's foundation, and one failure reflects on everyone. Even if they're royalty, he will judge them only by their performance on the test. The weight of his words crushes the applicants, their faces pale with fear. With the terrifying introduction complete, he finally begins to explain the test itself. Rick reveals the test is a mock battle where they must fight with everything they have. The other applicants are horrified, realizing they could be seriously injured. But the proctor clarifies they won't be fighting each other. He points his sword, declaring that he is their opponent, and they better come at him to kill. Kaito and Lifa are completely stunned by this impossible challenge. One brave applicant lets out a war cry, charging headfirst into the fray. Rick meets the attack with a single, effortless swing of his blade. The applicant is sent flying, his assault completely shut down in an instant. So much for being the first volunteer. The proctor looks utterly unimpressed, declaring that's enough from him. The defeated applicant can only tremble, told to back down and get out of the way. Another applicant steps forward, ready to try their luck against the proctor. From the sidelines, Lyra watches with a worried expression. A diagram reveals the adventurer ranks, placing Rick near the very top. She realizes Kaido's chances of passing this brutal test are slim. With the first challenger dismissed, Rick calls for the next applicant, number 4. The mysterious hooded girl, Lifa, steps forward to take her turn. Kaido watches her go, realizing she's the one who's been called. She stops before the proctor, her hands trembling slightly. But in an instant, she draws 2 curved blades, her entire demeanor shifting. Even Lyra can sense it. There's a strange and powerful aura around this girl. Kaito watches from the side, wondering what her fighting style could be. Rick stands ready, telling her to come at him whenever she's prepared. Her eye narrows, a flicker of intense focus replacing her timid demeanor. In a flash, she closes the distance, her blade clashing against his. She drops low, pressing the attack with a relentless 2-bladed assault. Lyra can only stare, completely stunned by the girl's incredible speed. Kaido is equally shocked, barely able to follow her movements. Even the proctor's expression shifts, a hint of genuine surprise on his face. Lifa lets out a fierce battle cry, unleashing a flurry of strikes. She moves like a phantom, creating afterimages as she overwhelms the gold-rank adventurer. So much for a simple exam. But Rick holds his ground, his eyes narrowed in intense concentration. He admits her speed and precision are flawless. This girl is a true prodigy. Kaido can only watch in awe, realizing she's on a completely different level. Even Lyra is stunned by the sheer ferocity of the hooded girl's assault. Lifa's fighting style is almost feral, like a beast cornered and ready to strike. She launches herself forward again, a blur of motion against the seasoned warrior. But her twin blades aren't her only trick. She reaches for another hidden weapon. She unleashes a spinning attack, her movements too fast for the eye to follow. Rick parries the blow, but the force of the impact is clearly more than he expected. And for the first time, the gold rank adventurer's expression shifts to one of pure shock. Lyra can only watch, her jaw practically on the floor. Kaito is right there with her, completely stunned by Lifa's raw power. But in the blink of an eye, Lifa completely vanishes from sight. The proctor scans the field, trying to track her impossible speed. She reappears directly behind him, dropping from the sky like a shadow. Before he can react, she unleashes a devastating kick at his head. The blow connects, sending the legendary adventurer stumbling forward. He barely manages to block her follow-up strike, completely on the defensive. She lands hard, but her relentless assault is far from over. With a fierce battle cry, she prepares to unleash her next attack. She grits her teeth, refusing to back down from the legendary warrior. But Rick lowers his sword, calmly declaring that he's seen enough. He notes her experience, but points out she fights with pure, uncontrolled rage. Lifa can only breathe heavily, her fierce assault brought to a sudden halt. The proctor tells her that her aggressive nature is a critical weakness, and with that he dismisses her, turning his attention to the next applicant. The hooded girl is completely stunned, her body trembling with disbelief. Her fierce expression crumbles, replaced by pure, unfiltered frustration. She looks up, her eyes wide with the shocking realization of what just happened. The proctor has just declared that she has failed the exam. Lifa turns back to Kaito, trying to explain her failure, but he's completely lost. From the stands, Lyra is stunned, believing a prodigy like that should have easily passed. She analyzes the girl's shadow-like movements, sensing a hidden power she can't quite place. With the prodigy dismissed, Rick turns his attention to the final applicant. Number 5. Kaito can only manage a nervous squeak, confirming it's his turn to face the legend. But a familiar voice cuts through the tension, shouting his name from the stands. It's Lyra, offering a bright smile and a final shout of encouragement. He manages a weak wave back, grateful for the support in this terrifying moment. She repeats his real name, the one Lyra just shouted for the whole world to hear. Kaito panics as Sif tells him to ignore his blown cover and focus on the test. So much for Jacob Rising. The proctor turns his gaze to Kaito, asking if he's the tamer. Rick seems intrigued, beckoning him forward and asking which monster will fight. But Kaito declares it's time to show everyone the results of his brutal training. He grips his wooden practice sword, his expression hardening with resolve. On his shoulder, Sif unleashes its signature body reinforcement spell. Kaito explodes forward, closing the distance in a blur of motion. He swings his weapon with all the amplified strength he can muster. Rick is completely taken aback, wondering why the tamer is fighting himself. So much for a standard exam. He easily dodges the attack, noting it's powered by support magic. But he points out a fatal flaw. Kaito's swing is far too wide and clumsy. Kaito realizes with dawning horror that raw power alone is useless. He adapts on the fly, ordering Lime to shorten into a makeshift club. He swings again, but Rick easily parries the blow with his gauntlet. Kaito lets out a frustrated roar, his attacks repeatedly blocked. But the proctor is actually impressed, noting the kid's lack of experience is interesting. Kaito grits his teeth, knowing his clumsy swings will never connect. A new desperate idea begins to form in his mind. He shouts a command, and Lime instantly transforms into a sharp spear. With a powerful shout, he hurls the living weapon at the proctor. Rick sidesteps the attack with ease, the spear embedding in the wall. So much for that plan. Rick is genuinely shocked, not by the attack, but by its sheer raw power. But Kaito doesn't stop, immediately following up with a powerful kick. The proctor catches his leg with ease, completely halting his momentum. He's actually impressed, admitting that Kaito has some serious nerve. Kaito can only shout in frustration, now completely at the mercy of the gold-rank adventurer. Rick effortlessly swings him around before tossing him aside. Well, that was embarrassing. From the stands, the other applicants are stunned by his tenacity. Even the mysterious Lifa watches with a quiet, unreadable focus. Kaito lands, realizing that his full-power attacks just aren't working. So he switches tactics, ordering Lime to form a gauntlet around his fist. Sif has one more trick up its sleeve, a new enchantment for its master. It unleashes a lightning enchantment, a spell they've never used in a real fight. Rick smirks, admitting the power is impressive, but useless if Kaito can't land a hit. Kaito's face breaks into a confident grin. He's got a plan. But the proctor's confident expression suddenly vanishes, replaced by confusion. Kaito shouts to Lime, asking if it's ready for what comes next. With a final, determined roar, he prepares to unleash his final gambit. He throws a punch, not at Rick, but straight at the ground beneath him. The proctor can only watch, completely baffled by this insane tactic. His face contorts in pure shock, realizing what the kid is actually trying to do. The ground shatters, the lightning arcing from Kaido's fist. The sheer untamed power sends a jolt through Rick's memory. It reminds him of a legendary battle from his own past, a fight against a monstrous serpent that pushed him to his limits. He recalls the clash of steel against its impenetrable scales. He was forced to leap back, narrowly avoiding its devastating attacks. But even the legendary adventurer didn't escape the fight unscathed. The beast revealed its true form, a terrifying multi-headed hydra. Rick remembers being surrounded completely on the defensive. Pushed to his absolute limit, he was forced to rely on magic. Back in the present, Kaido's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He screams for Lime to stop, his own power clearly overwhelming him. The memory of the Hydra flashes through Rick's mind once more. He was forced to unleash a powerful spell just to survive the encounter. Back in the present, Kaido and his familiars are completely exhausted. Rick smiles, admitting Kaido almost forced him to use magic again. Kaido can only repeat the word, completely unaware of what just happened. He admits he had a bad feeling and stopped his attack instinctively. He looks down, trying to process the outcome of his desperate gambit. After all that, he realizes the only thing he broke was his wooden sword. Rick lowers his weapon, declaring the mock battle is officially over. He admits Kaido's final desperate attack genuinely surprised him. In fact, he offers a rare smile, praising Kaido for a truly good fight. Kaido can only manage a stunned but happy reply, his hard work acknowledged. With that, Rick dismisses them all, announcing the first test is complete. The exam ends, leaving the fate of the applicants hanging in the air. The moment it's over, Kaido collapses, completely and utterly spent. He lies on the ground, congratulating his familiars on a job well done. Sif is still in awe, amazed he came up with that insane tactic mid-fight. Kaido explains he needed a move on the level of the Orochi to even stand a chance. So, just another casual Tuesday. Sif explains that Lime was able to mimic the Orochi's attack pattern. Kaido just smiles, relieved that his desperate gamble actually worked. But Lifa appears, declaring that the test isn't over just yet. Before he can react, she tackles him straight to the ground. He hits the dirt hard, completely pinned by the mysterious girl. She leans in close, demanding to know his one true name. So much for personal space. Her eyes are wide and intense. She's done playing games with his lies. Kaido's mind goes completely blank, his terrible cover story shattered. Even his familiars are frozen in shock by this sudden interrogation. He tries to deflect, still clinging to the lie he told her earlier. She offers a deal, promising to share her own story if he'll just be honest. With no other choice, Kaido finally relents, admitting his real name is Arihara Kaido. A wave of relief washes over Lifa's face, her intense search finally over. She gets off him, the sudden interrogation ending as quickly as it began. She confirms his identity, calling him the real Arihara Kaito. Kaito can only repeat her strange choice of words, more confused than ever. The scene shifts, showing Lyra enjoying a well-deserved snack in the city market. Later, the exam results are posted, revealing only 2 passing numbers, 4 and 5. Kaido celebrates his victory, as Lyra reminds him he earned it by facing a legend. Sif notes that number 4, the mysterious hooded girl, also passed the brutal test. Lyra approaches, asking Kaido if he was just getting bossed around by the mysterious girl. He can only stammer out a denial, completely flustered by the whole situation. But Lifa's words still echo in his mind. So you are the real Arihara Kaido. He's left on the ground, questioning what she could have possibly meant by that. She simply walks away, promising to explain everything at a later time. Lyra rushes over, asking what just happened, but Kaido is still processing the bizarre encounter. Later, he's still hung up on her words, wondering about this real version of himself. Lyra tries to cheer him up, explaining that passing the first test is the hardest part. She gives him a confident thumbs up, sure he'll have no problem with the final interview. Kaido's face goes blank. It seems his guide forgot to mention a rather important detail. A guild staffer calls the 2 successful applicants to the waiting room for their interviews. Kaido panics, admitting to Lyra he never practiced for this part of the test. Sif chimes in with its own vote of confidence, adding a hesitant probably at the end. Lime, however, remains blissfully unaware, offering a happy little chirp of support. The sheer stress of it all hits Kaido at once, his stomach tying itself in knots. The door to the waiting room clicks open, signaling the final stage of the exam. He steps inside to find the mysterious Lifa already waiting for him. She looks up, her expression as unreadable and intense as ever. Kaido nervously tries to bring up their aggressive conversation from earlier, but he's cut short as Mai enters. calling Arihara Kaido to his interview first. Mai politely informs him that his familiars will have to wait outside. The door to the interview room clicks open, sealing his fate. She holds the door for him, and Kaido can only manage a nervous nod. He steps inside, his voice trembling as he announces his arrival. A man sits behind a grand desk, ready to begin the final interview. He introduces himself as Belche Ragiazal, the guild master of the Hendle kingdom. Kaido offers a deep, respectful bow, stating his full, otherworldly name. His mind short-circuits. This is way above the pay grade he was expecting. So much for a simple HR chat. The guildmaster notes he's heard of the boy who escaped the Orochi's lair. He offers a warm smile, congratulating Kaido on passing Rick's brutal test. Belche gestures for him to sit, and Kaido nervously obliges. But before the interview officially starts, the guildmaster has a few questions. He asks Kaido what he knows about the hero summoning ritual. Belche explains that a demon lord threatens their world, forcing kingdoms to find heroes. The explanation jogs Kaido's memory. Sif told him something very similar. He reveals a neighboring kingdom recently summoned a hero from another world, and that hero claims someone else was accidentally dragged along with them. Kaido leaps to his feet, desperately asking if that hero's name is Shishihara. The guildmaster's gaze is steady, asking if that confirms his suspicions. He reveals the hero's name is a state secret, confirming Kaido is the real deal. So much for keeping a low profile. Kaido repeats the phrase, remembering Lifa called him the real one too. Belch explains that heroes from other worlds possess unparalleled magical talent. A memory of Shishihara flashes through his mind, the pieces clicking into place. The kingdom that summoned her theorized that Kaido might be just as powerful. Our boy can only listen, completely lost in this political mess. So the Filgan kingdom plastered his name and face all over their lands. A massive bounty led to countless imposters claiming to be Arihara Kaido. So he's famous, just for all the wrong reasons. The truth hits him. This is why Lifa was so desperate to find the genuine article. Belch asks if he's from a world without magic, and Kaido can only agree. The guildmaster's expression softens, praising him for surviving this long alone. Kaido can only manage a stunned reply, agreeing with the guildmaster's assessment. He lowers his head, offering his thanks for the information, but his voice is heavy. But his expression brightens, declaring that in this world, he's finally found precious friends. Belchi smiles warmly, recognizing the incredible strength within the young man. Meanwhile, back in the waiting room, Sif lets out a rather dramatic sneeze. The shapeshifter and Lime are waiting with Lifa, the mysterious hooded girl. Sif suddenly gets defensive, demanding to know what she finds so amusing. But Lifa simply looks down, admitting that she was just feeling envious of them. The two familiars can only stare, completely baffled by her sudden confession. Belche then gives Kaido a pen and paper, telling him to write a letter to Shishihara. Kaido hands over the finished letter, his message to Shishihara now complete. The guildmaster examines the strange script, recognizing it as otherworldly. Belche explains the letter will prove his identity, but Kaido worries this means he'll be forced to fight. But the guildmaster reassures him. He's a victim, not a soldier. The words hang in the air, leaving Kaido to ponder his new reality. He weighs his options. Find Shishihara, then return here to build a new life. Belche seems relieved, noting this should end the kingdom-wide manhunt for him. He's stunned to learn the heroes were planning to recruit him all along. So much for being just the baggage. The revelation leaves him completely speechless, his mind reeling. The guildmaster winks, assuring him his identity is safe within these walls. Kaido can only stammer a reply, still reeling from the revelation. He then asks if the Hendle kingdom has its own summoned hero. Belche confirms one was chosen recently, though the details remain a closely guarded secret. Kaido takes in this new piece of information, another mystery in this strange world. The guildmaster then declares the interview is over, leaving Kaido utterly baffled. He explains that a person's actions and expressions reveal more than words ever could, and that is how he can accurately judge a person's true character. So this whole thing was just a vibe check. With the interview concluded, the heavy door clicks shut behind him. He returns to the waiting room, where Sif immediately asks how it went. He happily explains the guild knew everything, and he finally knows Shishihara is safe. Mai calls for Lifa Wulgar, signaling it's her turn for the interview. But Lifa asks Kaido to wait, insisting they need to talk after her interview. Mai agrees to give them some privacy, telling them to let her know when they're finished. Alone in the room, Kaido asks what this is all about. She lowers her head, offering a quiet apology for eavesdropping on his entire interview. Kaido is completely stunned, questioning how she could have possibly heard a thing. She simply explains that her hearing is far more sensitive than a normal person's. Sif immediately goes on the defensive, demanding to know who this girl really is. Lifa reaches for her hood, revealing she is the one chosen by the Hendle kingdom. She pulls back her hood to reveal a pair of fox ears, declaring herself this kingdom's hero. Kaito can only repeat her last name, Woolgar, in utter disbelief. He and Sif are completely floored. This girl is this kingdom's hero. His mind struggles to catch up, pointing out that she's a beastman. Sif notes her aura is a strange mix of human and monster. Lifa explains she was born with the power of a monster dwelling within her. Kaito asks if her parents were monsters, but she confirms they were human. She theorizes it's a genetic throwback from a distant, monstrous ancestor. Sif calls it atavism, a rare phenomenon even in this fantasy world. So, she basically won the genetic lottery, or lost it, depending on your perspective. Kaito finally asks the real question. Why was she so desperate to find him? Lifa admits that finding him was just a side quest she never expected to complete. Kaito asks the obvious question. Why would a hero need to become an adventurer? Lifa explains she's still too inexperienced and needs to gain real-world skill. He realizes this is why her identity was kept secret, even from the guild master. She confesses that in battle, the monster inside her takes over, driving her into a rage. Kaito finally understands the reason for her wild, aggressive fighting style during the exam. But she reveals that when he's near, that monstrous power strangely becomes calm. His presence seems to soothe her rage, allowing her to feel like herself again. Kaito wonders if this is another side effect of his legendary pure magic, so he's basically a walking, talking chill pill for monsters. She believes that with him by her side, she can finally control her instincts and fulfill her duty. And with a desperate plea in her eyes, she asks Kaito to help her. Kaito is completely speechless, his mind struggling to process her request. But Sif cuts in, telling the hero to hold on for just a moment. It confirms her theory. Kaito's magic could soothe her, but that's not reason enough to risk his life. Lifa's confident facade crumbles, her desperation showing on her face. Sif reminds him of his own goal. Doesn't he want to find Shishihara? Sif presses the issue, asking why she'd ask for his help knowing his own difficult situation. The young hero can only look down, unable to find the right words. Sif demands the full story, warning her not to simply use its master. Otherwise, it declares, they will consider her an enemy. So much for inter-kingdom cooperation. The outburst startles Lifa, as Kaito's familiars stand ready to defend him. Lifa's tough exterior crumbles, revealing her true motive. She's looking for her sister. Kaito is taken aback as she confirms she's searching for her twin, who vanished 2 years ago. But Sif remains unconvinced, demanding to know why she needs Kaito's power for a simple search. Lifa's expression darkens as she prepares to reveal a devastating truth. She explains that her sister is now a part of the Demon Lord's army. Kaito can only stare, his mind reeling from the impossible revelation. Even Sif is completely floored by this shocking turn of events. Lifa explains her sister is using her monstrous power to harm others, and she has to be stopped. As the hero, she's bound to cross paths with her, and Sif asks just how strong this sister is. Lifa drops the final bombshell. Her twin is a high-ranking executive in the Demon Lord's forces, so a bit of a family feud is brewing. Kaito's mind flashes back to the Orochi, wondering if her sister is on that same terrifying level. Lifa admits she wants to stop her twin, but can't do it alone while her own power remains untamed. Her voice breaks, tears welling in her eyes as she makes her desperate plea. The tough facade is gone, replaced by the raw vulnerability of a girl in an impossible situation. She bows her head, leaving Kaito and his familiars to process the heavy request. Sif immediately objects, telling Kaito the plan is far too dangerous to even consider. But it clarifies that ultimately, the final life-altering decision rests with its master. No pressure, kid. Kaito is stunned, questioning if a choice this heavy is really his to make. Sif and Lime offer their unwavering support, ready to follow him down any path he chooses. But Kaito's mind is elsewhere, focused on the goal he's had since day one, finding Shishihara. He weighs his options. A girl is asking for his help, and he's the only one who can do it. Kaito understands that this is a burden that only he can carry, and if he's the only person in the world she can possibly turn to. Then with a warm smile, Kaito makes his decision, offering Lifa his strength. The young hero is completely stunned by his immediate acceptance. She asks if he's sure, reminding him of his friend in the other kingdom. Kaito admits he's worried, but he knows Shishihara is safe for now. He tells Lifa that right now, she's the one in more immediate danger. Overwhelmed by his kindness, the hero can only break down in tears of relief. And with that, a new unlikely alliance is officially formed. Through tears of relief, Lifa offers her heartfelt thanks to Kaido. The story shifts to a few days later, back in the capital city of Hendle. Kaido stands on a stage, ready for his official adventurer induction ceremony. The guildmaster officially welcomes Arihara Kaido into their ranks. Kaido smiles, finally recognized as a true adventurer of this world. He's handed his guild card, the final proof that he has passed the exam. Lifa looks on, holding her own card, ready to start a new journey with her new ally. His two familiars, Sif and Lime, watch proudly from the sidelines. And of course, Lyra is there, cheering louder than anyone for her new friend. Even the stoic Gil offers a rare, supportive smile for the new recruit. With their new alliance formed, Kaido and Lifa walk through the guild halls. But their journey is cut short by the guildmaster Belsay. He reveals the castle has confirmed her identity, surprised to learn she's the hero. Lifa can only apologize for hiding her true status from him. But Belsay brushes it off, explaining he's already heard her side of the story. He turns to Kaido, formally asking him to lend his strength to the hero. But he warns Kaido that helping her means facing dangers on par with the Orochi, so no pressure or anything. The grim reminder is enough to make Kaido break out in a cold sweat. He admits that hearing it spelled out so clearly is absolutely terrifying. But his fear is replaced by resolve. He's committed to being the strength she needs. Belsay adds that this choice will make visiting the other kingdom much more difficult. But Kaito is firm, explaining he can see Shishihara someday now that he knows she's safe. And besides, he knew he would regret abandoning Lifa for the rest of his life. Lifa can only look on, her heart filled with gratitude for his selfless choice. The guildmaster closes his eyes with a knowing smile, respecting the young man's resolve. He promises to relay Kaido's intentions to the Filgan kingdom, and our boy offers his thanks. A few days later, Lyra walks with the new adventurers, congratulating them on passing. She notes with a smile that they've already formed a party. Lyra then turns to Lifa, praising her incredible, almost inhuman movements during the test. She eagerly introduces herself, as Kaido wonders how she'd react to Lifa's actual job title. Lyra asks Lifa if she has any plans now that the exam is officially over. With no other plans in sight, she suggests they all go out and celebrate together. Their celebration takes the form of a massive, delicious-looking feast. Back at the inn, Lifa is completely captivated by Melk's legendary cooking. She asks if Kaido and Lyra both live here, and our boy confirms it. Lifa seems to be deep in thought, a new idea forming in her mind. And just like that, she makes a sudden, life-altering decision. She declares she'll live here too, citing the inn's comfort and amazing food. But her real reason is much simpler. She wants to be by Kaido's side. So much for subtlety. Her blunt confession leaves both Kaido and Lyra completely speechless. Kaido realizes her sudden attachment is probably just another side effect of his pure magic. And without another word, she sprints off to grab her things, leaving them stunned. Lyra turns to Kaido, remarking that he's surprisingly popular for a new arrival. She teases him mercilessly, pointing out how he's already charmed the new girl. So much for keeping a low profile. He spends the entire walk home frantically denying everything, but Lyra just laughs it off. In record time, Lifa returns with a massive backpack, leaving them both speechless. Even the stoic innkeeper, Melk, is a bit surprised by this sudden development. She marches to the counter, asking if the room next to Kaido's is free, much to his horror. Kaito immediately panics, realizing this is a little too close for comfort. He tries to object, but the hero has absolutely no idea why he's so flustered. But Melk simply asks if there's a problem, as Lyra tells her to just let the girl pick a room. Lifa turns to Kaido with a heartbreakingly sad expression, asking if he really doesn't want her here. Kaido can only sweat nervously, completely defeated by the emotional 1-2 punch. He finally relents, and Lifa's triumphant cheer echoes from her new room, so much for winning that argument. A few days later, Lifa calls out to Kaido, ready for their first official day as a party. She's decked out in brand new adventuring gear, looking every bit the part of a seasoned warrior. She's fully equipped with pouches and a blade, ready for whatever comes their way. With a warm smile, she asks her new partner if he's ready to go. Kaido, now in his own new gear, grins back, confirming he's more than prepared. He's even got a new dagger at his side, a sign that his journey as a brawling tamer is just beginning. And Lime has found a new favorite spot, happily perched on Kaido's belt. Lifa compliments his new outfit, and Kaido accepts the praise with a confident smile. But Sif is completely freaking out, its eyes wide with some unseen terror. It explains that with the hat, it can avoid being mistaken for a monster. A solid, if slightly paranoid fashion choice. Besides, it admits it prefers its cat form anyway, nuzzling against its master's cheek. Lifa notes that Lime seems to have found a comfortable spot as well. Kaido is just happy to see his new partner getting along with his familiars. With his team assembled, Kaido declares it's time for their first official adventurer quest. Just then, a familiar voice calls out, and they turn to see Lyra approaching. She greets the new party, confirming that today is the day of their very first mission. Lyra explains that thanks to their high exam scores, they can take on monster-slaying quests right away. She offers them an easier option, but Kaito and Leafa seem ready for a real challenge. And with their minds made up, they officially accept their first monster subjugation request. Their mission takes them to a vast open field plagued by local beasts. Kaido charges into the fray, his makeshift staff ready to strike down the wolf-like creatures. Leafa moves like a blur, her twin blades cutting through the monsters with deadly precision. The remaining creatures scatter, fleeing from the overwhelming power of the new adventurers. Kaido smiles, confident that the fields are now safe from the kobold threat. So much for a difficult first day on the job. He turns to check on his partner, asking if she's all right after the fight. Leafa looks at her blade, realizing that with Kaido nearby, she was able to fight without losing control. Sif is pleased, noting they've made an excellent start as adventurers. Their journey continues, taking them across the vast and open landscape. Their next quest leads them to a dark tunnel, and Kaido calls out to Leafa in concern. But the hero is completely out of commission, overwhelmed by something inside. He stands over her, realizing the foul-smelling tunnel is a death trap they can't possibly survive. He realizes Leifa's heightened senses can't handle the stench, leaving him to face this alone. So Leafa is forced to wait outside, unable to help her new partner. She jumps to her feet as Kaido finally emerges, the quest seemingly complete. He gives a weak thumbs up, though both of them look completely drained from the ordeal. So much for an easy day. Their adventurer life isn't all monster slaying. They also take on simple jobs like weeding gardens. They even take on a quest to find a lost pet, though Leafa seems less than thrilled. Because Kaido's animal-repelling curse is still very much active, making the rescue a bit of a nightmare. They take on all sorts of jobs, from manual labor to simple errands. A month passes as they steadily build their reputation as reliable adventurers. After a long day of work, they settle down to cook their catch over a fire. Kaito and his familiars relax, but Leafa seems completely mesmerized by the food. Her stomach lets out a desperate growl, her hunger clearly winning the battle. Kaito reassures her, promising the fish will be ready to eat in just a moment. But she's so lost in the moment, she accidentally calls him Mama, much to his confusion. So much for the stoic hero act. Kaito reflects on their progress, realizing they've finally gotten used to this new life. He admits that fighting all these monsters has made him feel a little stronger, though he quickly adds that none of their opponents have been particularly tough. But Leafa feels it too, a sense of growth she never had fighting alone. She wonders if it's all thanks to the calming influence of Kaito's magic. But she realizes that his power isn't the only reason for her change. She recalls being told to find trustworthy companions, a lesson she finally understands. With Kaido, Sif, and Lime by her side, she knows she can become even stronger. Lime can only offer a silent, wobbly look of complete agreement. Kaido's smile shows he feels the exact same way about their new partnership. Even Sif seems content, the new party finally in perfect sync. Sif asks Leafa if she should be reporting back to the castle. Kaido immediately asks if she's told the kingdom about him. She admits she has, but for now they haven't asked to see him. Our boy breathes a sigh of relief, admitting he's terrified of meeting royalty. With the political talk over, Kaido turns his attention back to their dinner. He gets up, deciding to gather some more firewood for their camp. Leafa offers to help, but Kaido assures her he'll be fine on his own. He ventures a short distance away, searching for suitable branches. But his search is cut short by a sharp, sudden pain in his hand. He looks down to see a small cut, a single drop of blood welling up. He turns, sensing a presence nearby, wondering if it's another monster. A massive white wolf emerges from the trees, its eyes glowing an eerie red. But instead of attacking, it wags its tail and Kaido drops his firewood in shock. The creature nuzzles against his hand and Kaido is completely frozen in disbelief. His mind reels, questioning if this is a dream or some kind of strange illusion. He hesitantly reaches out, his hand finally making contact with its soft fur. The realization hits him. This is the first time in his life he's ever pet an animal. He takes a closer look, realizing this isn't a dog but a full-grown wolf. But he smiles, deciding it doesn't matter. It's cute and it's not running away. But as he pets it, his hand sinks into its face as if it were made of clay. Kaido's mind snaps back to reality as the wolf's face flashes with light. The creature dissolves into a wisp of smoke, vanishing back into the forest. He's left completely stunned, watching his one friendly encounter disappear. Just then, Sif comes sprinting through the brush, calling his name in a panic. Lifa follows, asking what's wrong with a mouthful of their dinner. So much for a relaxing meal. Sif asks if he's all right, explaining it sensed a sudden change in his magic. The shapeshifter's eye narrows, sensing that something is definitely off. But Kaido just smiles, explaining he was just playing with a friendly wolf. Sif's body tenses, its instinct screaming that something is very wrong here, and it immediately slaps its master, calling him an idiot for being so careless. Sif explains that the wolf was a monster, and it used his blood to force a pact. Kaito is completely stunned by this unbelievable revelation, but Sif is furious, scolding him for looking so happy about the whole thing. It explains that a monster forcing a contract is unheard of, meaning this one is dangerously intelligent. Kaito can only offer a sheepish apology as Sif continues to lecture him on his responsibilities. Meanwhile, Lifa quietly recalls the creature, identifying it as a white wolf. That same white wolf pads silently through the dark, moonlit forest. It approaches two mysterious figures, one of whom welcomes it back. The long-haired woman asks if it successfully observed the two adventurers. She notes it must be a high-ranking monster, but her companion dismisses it as a mere temporary familiar. The woman gently pokes the wolf's snout as if testing its very form. She hums thoughtfully, processing the information the creature has brought back. Her companion asks Iris if she's ever heard of the legendary pure magic. Iris explains it's a rare power, once used as a sacrifice to ancient beasts. With the wolf at her side, Iris begins to walk away, leaving her companion behind. Her face twists into a wicked grin as she decides to play a little trick on her sister. The story shifts back to the city, where Kaido and Lifa are preparing for a new journey. He happily pets a large steed, Sif perched comfortably on his shoulder. Lifa admits she was worried about the journey, but notes the demonic horse seems calm. Sif explains that demonic beasts, unlike normal animals, aren't repelled by Kaido's power. Lifa eagerly reaches out, wanting to pet the demonic beast as well. But her friendly gesture is met with a face full of demonic horse slobber. The creature growls, confirming it has a serious dislike for humans. So much for a friendly ride. Just then, a familiar face approaches, and Kaido recognizes his exam proctor, Rick. The gold-rank adventurer smiles, asking if the new recruits are ready to go. Kaito and Lifa confirm their readiness, prepared for their first major quest. They set off in a carriage, with Rick himself acting as their personal chauffeur. Their journey takes them far from the capital, into the untamed wilderness. Kaido can't help but ask if they're truly worthy of accompanying a legend like him. Rick explains their mission is to hunt a griffin, a perfect learning experience for them. Lifa confidently declares they could probably take the griffin down themselves. But Rick's sharp gaze cuts through her confidence, reminding her of the beast's true power. He makes it clear their role is to observe, not to fight, much to Lifa's disappointment. Even Sif tries to reason with her, admitting they're not yet ready for such a powerful foe. But Lifa is frustrated, desperate to face a real challenge and grow stronger. Kaito watches her, worried her desperation to save her sister will lead to a fatal mistake. But Rick seems to understand her impatience, finally relenting. He offers them a chance to prove themselves, promising to test their growth at the campsite. The unexpected offer leaves both Kaido and Lifa completely stunned. As their journey continues, a new personal test now awaits them at the end of the road. With a determined shout, Kaido launches himself at the gold-rank adventurer. Their blades clash as Lifa watches intently from the sidelines. She seems worried, knowing this is a test of their true progress. Rick acknowledges his movements have become much more refined, but he points out that Kaido is still far from a true warrior. He tells Kaido he can't just rely on his slime's transformations for every fight. A flashback reveals Rick has faced monsters on a completely different level. Kaido admits he lacks the technical skill to use other weapons, so much for being a brawling tamer. Rick explains that a true fighter creates openings and strikes with their best weapon, and to demonstrate his point, he picks up a simple rock from the ground. Kaito's eyes narrow, absorbing every detail of the veteran's lesson. He charges again, but Rick doesn't even move, letting the attack miss completely. The proctor then reveals his next weapon, a simple length of rope. Before Kaido can react, his ankle is caught in a makeshift snare. He's yanked off his feet, his lesson in humility now painfully complete. With Kaido down, Rick turns his attention to Lifa for her own brutal lesson. From the ground, Kaido watches, a look of dawning understanding on his face. Sif explains to Lime that high-speed transformation is the key to creating openings. Kaido clenches his fist, realizing he needs a more flexible fighting style, so less punching, more thinking. With the lesson learned, Rick turns back to Lifa, telling her it's her turn now. Their training continues in a vast open clearing by a lake. Lifa unleashes a blindingly fast strike, her movements sharp and precise. Rick parries, noting she could do this during the exam, but something has changed. Her hands tense, preparing for her next move with practiced ease. She uses his own shoulders as a springboard, launching herself into the air. He turns, a flicker of surprise on his face as she lands perfectly behind him. A confident smile spreads across her face, her attack executed flawlessly. Rick is impressed, realizing she's using her shadow stepping calmly now. She follows up with a powerful punch, shouting her attack for good measure. But he catches her fist, pointing out that shouting your attacks only works in anime. Rick asks if she has what it takes to truly win, her face a mask of shock. But her focus shatters and she trips, landing in a heap on the ground. Rick stands over her, admitting her movements have improved without her rage. But he presses her, asking why she isn't using the monster's power within her. Lifa can only look away, tears welling in her eyes, unable to answer. Kaido steps in, wondering if his pure magic could help her control that power. But she admits they tried it once and the result was far too dangerous. Kaito recalls a training session that went completely off the rails. A memory flashes of her losing control, going completely feral and biting him. So much for a simple sparring match. Rick simply tells her to work hard until she can master both sides of her power. Lifa clenches her fist, accepting his harsh but necessary critique. Rick then turns his attention to her magic, the other half of her power. But he admits he can't help with her shadow abilities and just tells her to figure it out. So much for a detailed training plan. Lifa is completely floored by his incredibly unhelpful advice. The two rookies can only stand there, stunned by their mentor's brutal honesty. But Rick admits that despite his harsh words, they are both growing stronger. He then points out Lifa's tendency to get cocky, a fatal flaw in any adventurer. He warns them both to show respect, or they'll never succeed in this line of work. Lifa can only bow her head, humbly accepting the veteran's wisdom. Kaito, however, just smiles, grateful for any lesson from a legend like Rick. Kaito reflects on the day, grateful for the chance to join this mission. As night falls, the moon hangs over the silent, rugged mountains. Their demonic steed rests peacefully, the carriage parked for the night. With Lifa asleep, Kaito and Rick sit by the fire, a quiet moment between mentor and student. Kaito asks about Rick's magic, noting he never saw him use any during the exam. The veteran's answer of sword shape changing leaves Kaito completely baffled. Rick clarifies it's a type of magic that alters the form of a specific object, but he quickly cuts the lesson short, admitting that explaining it is a pain. So much for a patient teacher. He simply tells Kaito to wait and see it for himself when they face the griffin. Kaito can only conclude that his new mentor is a man of very, very few words. Rick smoothly changes the subject, asking about Kaito and Lifa's relationship, all while the hero herself is supposedly fast asleep nearby. He teases Kaito, suggesting he should know what he means at his age. Kaito can only sweat, comparing the legendary warrior to a nosy uncle. He tries to shut it down, claiming he's not interested in her complicated life. Rick just yawns, calling his serious answer incredibly boring. Kaito clarifies that he sees her more like a little sister he has to protect. But his calm explanation is cut short by a sudden, unexpected grab. A foot latches onto his shirt with surprising strength. So much for a peaceful night. The supposedly sleeping Lifa yanks him closer, leaving Kaito utterly terrified. She's fast asleep, her grip on his shirt still surprisingly strong. Kaito tries to cover her, worried she'll catch a cold from her terrible sleeping habits. Rick calls him a disappointing guy, leaving Kaito completely baffled by the sudden insult. The veteran just brushes it off, acting like it was nothing at all. He then smiles, admitting he's just relieved their partnership seems to be in good shape. So this was all just a test of his patience. Kaito can only stare, completely lost by his mentor's strange line of questioning. Rick hands him a sleeping bag, telling him to get some rest for the journey ahead. But Kaito is still hung up on his words, wondering who else he was referring to. A few days pass, and their carriage finally arrives at its destination. Rick announces their arrival as Kaito marvels at the vastness of the Hendle kingdom. He realizes that even with a plan, seeing Shishihara again won't be easy. But his thoughts are cut short by a piercing cry that rips through the forest. Rick identifies the sound as a griffin, noting it's more aggressive during mating season. Kaito can't help but look worried, questioning if they're ready for this. But Rick brushes off his concern, confidently telling them to keep moving. The trio ventures deeper into the woods, following their legendary guide. Rick suddenly holds up a hand, bringing their advance to a silent halt. Their target reveals itself, a massive griffin, its beak open in a furious cry. The beast is perched atop a rocky peak, its territorial screech echoing across the valley. Kaido confirms its identity, but Leafa's sharp eyes spot something else near the nest. She spotted a pack of vicious, wolf-like creatures lurking below. Rick identifies them as rage wolves, waiting to scavenge the griffin's leftovers. With a confident smile, he asks if his two students are ready for a pop quiz. Kaido and Leafa are completely stunned by the sudden, unexpected test, but they both shout in agreement, ready to prove their worth. Rick lays out the plan. He'll go on ahead while they handle the welcoming committee, and in a blur of motion, the legendary adventurer vanishes from sight. Kaito can only stare in disbelief, wondering if the man just teleported. But Leafa screams his name, pointing up towards the griffin's nest. Because Rick is already in the air, having crossed the entire valley in a single leap. So much for a stealthy approach. Kaito realizes this is Rick's sword shape-changing magic, as his blade multiplies into a storm of steel. Snapped out of his awe, Kaito shouts that it's their turn to move, and Leafa agrees. With a determined shout, Kaito grips his staff, ready to charge into the fray. They sprint forward as Kaito orders Sif to enchant Leafa's blades with lightning. Sif's magic crackles to life, imbuing her twin knives with raw electrical power. Leafa's eyes narrow, her focus absolute as she prepares to unleash the storm. The rage wolves howl in agony as her lightning-fast strikes electrocute the entire pack. Kaito shouts for her to take the left flank, their teamwork now perfectly in sync. A lone wolf lunges for him, its fangs bared in a desperate final attack. But Kaito meets it with a solid right hook, reminding everyone why he's the brawling tamer. He slams his staff down, crushing the skull of another wolf. But the rest of the pack charges, undeterred by their fallen comrade. Remembering Rick's lesson, Kaito pulls out a rope, snaring the lead wolf. He uses its own momentum against it, swinging the beast into the ground. So much for a simple pop quiz. With an opening created, he shouts a new command to his familiars. He slams his weapon into the ground, a new plan forming on the fly. Lime transforms into a massive flaming axe, ready for a new attack. He unleashes a new technique, a slime volcano that engulfs the pack. Kaito smiles, pleased with his new move, wondering what to call it. He decides on a name for his new signature attack, Shadow Swamp. The remaining wolves are trapped in the sticky black substance, completely immobilized. Leafa explains their paralysis, her expression cold and focused. With a final brutal flurry, the last of the rage wolves are eliminated. Kaito reflects on their journey, realizing Rick's lessons have paid off in a real fight. He marvels at Leafa's skill, noting her power is more like a hero's than a monster's. Leafa retorts that his own moves were inhuman, though Kaito just laughs it off as a compliment. But their celebration is cut short as they wonder what happened to their mentor. Their eyes widen in pure, unadulterated shock at the scene above. Because Rick is already standing atop the griffin's corpse, the beast impaled by a dozen swords. So much for a long, drawn-out boss fight. Kaito can only stare, questioning if this is the true power of a gold-rank adventurer. Rick approaches his students, offering his praise for a job well done. But his expression suddenly shifts, his eye catching something in the distance. He warns them that something is coming, and Kaito and Leafa look on in confusion. From the tree line, a massive, organized army of monsters begins to march. The sky fills with winged creatures, an aerial assault force descending upon them. On the ground, a legion of armored beasts charges forward with military precision. The flying soldiers are humanoid griffins, clad in matching ominous armor, and their ground support is a pack of equally armored, battle-ready wolves. Rick is completely stunned, realizing these are trained monsters, not wild beasts. So much for a simple griffin hunt. The winged soldiers circle overhead, a clear sign that this is no random encounter. Kaito can only stare in shock, questioning what this new army is. Leafa is equally horrified, her mind struggling to process the scene. But Rick steps forward, ordering his students back as he prepares to face the horde alone. A warning shot lands at his feet, a clear sign that the enemy is ready. Kaito immediately shouts for Leafa, telling her they have to escape now. She looks back, a glint of light in her eyes as she confirms the order. But a volley of attacks rains down, forcing the two rookies to scatter. Kaito's eyes widen in pure, unadulterated terror. He shoves Leafa out of the way, screaming her name as an attack closes in. He calls for Lime, who forms a shield, proving a slime is a tamer's best friend. His face is a mask of pure shock as the attack connects. The force of the blast sends him flying, his body ragdolling through the air. He hits the ground hard, tumbling away from the devastating impact. Leafa can only scream his name, watching in horror from a distance. But a new, unexpected figure emerges from the tree line with a casual wave. She calmly notes how Kaito just protected her little sister. and with a chilling smile, she addresses him by his full name, Arihara Kaido. Arihara surfaces, gasping for air as Shift urges him to swim for shore. But they're caught in a powerful current, being swept away from the battle. A very convenient, villain monologue-induced escape. And to make matters worse, a new monster descends from the sky. Back on the battlefield, Rick is airborne, surrounded by winged soldiers. He roars in fury, vowing to turn every last one of them to ash. His unique sword unleashes a storm of smaller, magical blades. The gold-ranked adventurer becomes a whirlwind of death and steel. From the tree line, Leafa's sister watches the monsters fall from the sky. She smiles, admitting Rick is a decent warm-up act for her army, but she knows he's nothing compared to what's coming next. Meanwhile, Leifa carves her own path through the armored wolves. She screams in desperation, needing to get to Arihara's side. Her sister notes that without Arihara, Leifa is finally fighting with her full, untamed power. A very convenient observation from the villain gallery. She licks her lips, noting his pure magic looks absolutely delicious. The white wolf familiar pads silently back to her side. With a smirk, she prepares to relay her new battle plan. She touches the wolf's head, transferring her orders directly. With a final command, she sends her borrowed familiar on its way. The wolf digs a hole, vanishing into the earth in a swirl of magic. With her messenger gone, she decides it's time for her to join the fun. Back on the battlefield, Leifa fights with desperate fury, her sister's voice telling her not to disappoint. The villainess grins, threatening to steal everything if Leifa keeps this up. A classic case of evil sibling rivalry. Meanwhile, Shift can only scream Arihara's name as he's swept away. Arihara slowly returns to consciousness on a rocky riverbank. He sits up dazed, wondering what happened after the explosion. He gets to his feet, thanking Shift for pulling him from the water. But the shapeshifter denies it, admitting it wasn't the one who saved him. A familiar white wolf appears, startling Arihara with a friendly bark. He recognizes his first-ever animal friend, wondering how it found him. Shift explains this is the monster that forced a pact, its motives still a mystery. Guess it's a good thing he didn't ghost his new familiar. Arihara thanks the wolf for the rescue, and it happily accepts his gratitude. He looks down the river, realizing they've been swept far from the battle. Shift suggests they head back to find Rick, and Arihara agrees, ready to move. But he suddenly realizes Lime is gone, and Shift explains it must have stayed with Leifa. The white wolf barks, trying to get his attention, and Arihara asks what it wants. Shift translates, explaining the wolf wants to lend him its strength. Arihara asks for Shift's advice, and the creature agrees they can trust this intelligent monster for now. With his mind made up, Arihara agrees, and they begin their journey back. The new familiar leads them deep into the unfamiliar, dense forest. Arihara follows, already feeling the strain of the long trek. Shift asks if he's all right, and he admits the heat is starting to get to him. But the wolf's ears suddenly twitch, sensing a change in the air. A strange mist erupts around Arihara, catching him completely by surprise. But Arihara is surprised to find the mist is cool and refreshing. The white wolf is the source, controlling the wind with a happy bark. Shift notes the creature seems unusually friendly for a monster. Arihara thanks his new companion, deciding it needs a proper name. He asks if he can name it, and the wolf barks in excitement. After a moment's thought, he comes up with the perfect name. He suggests the name Hakuro, and the wolf's eyes light up. The newly named Hakuro wags its tail, overjoyed with its new identity. A much better name than Jacob, that's for sure. But their peaceful moment is shattered by a sudden, unseen threat. Hakuro turns with a vicious snarl, sensing a new monster approaching. A group of lizard men emerges from the trees, their eyes fixed on Arihara. Shift identifies them as dragonkin, a weaker relative of the Orochi. The creature warns that if they're caught, they'll be eaten alive. A truly comforting thought. But Arihara steels his resolve, ready to face the new threat head-on. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, the ground is littered with the bodies of fallen monsters. The griffin lies dead, a testament to Rick's overwhelming power. The rage wolves have been completely annihilated, their howls silenced for good. In the forest, Rick and Leifa are in a desperate retreat. He calls out to the hero, who pushes forward without stopping. Rick finally grabs her, warning that she'll collapse if she doesn't rest soon. He offers the exhausted hero a bottle of water. She blames herself for what happened, but Rick insists the failure was his. He questions the monster's presence, realizing they were being hunted. Leifa confirms his fears. They were soldiers of the Demon Lord's army. Rick is stunned, asking how she could possibly know that. She explains they were after her because she's the kingdom's hero. The revelation leaves Rick completely speechless. A hero in his party? He finally accepts the unbelievable truth, his mind reeling. As she drinks, she recognizes the familiar, infuriating presence of her sister. She clutches the canteen, her thoughts fixed on her long-lost twin. Lifa's expression hardens, vowing not to hold back in this family feud. Meanwhile, Arihara has already taken down 2 of the lizardmen. The remaining monsters can only stare in shock at their fallen comrades. But Arihara gives them no time to think, landing a solid punch. He moves with a newfound confidence, dodging their clumsy attacks. He follows up with a powerful kick, sending another monster flying. But more reinforcements arrive, armed and ready for a real fight. He launches himself forward, delivering a flying body attack, a classic wrestling move naturally. The remaining creatures are sent scattering, completely overwhelmed. He stands victorious, asking how they like the power of a cornered human. But his victory is short-lived as more lizard men arrive on the scene. Arihara knows he's outnumbered. A battle of attrition is a fight he can't win. But with no escape route, he realizes he has no choice but to stand his ground. Just then, Hakuro barks, getting its new master's attention. Shift translates, explaining the wolf wants to borrow his power for the fight. Arihara agrees, placing his trust in his new, surprisingly intelligent companion. But the moment he touches the wolf, he's stunned by the sudden surge of energy. The power transfer is far more intense than he expected, nearly knocking him over. A magical battery drain, but for a good cause. He looks up to see Hakuro wreathed in brilliant magical flames. The wolf unleashes a fiery howl, stunning the lizardmen with its newfound power. But Arihara is thrown to the ground, stunned by a sudden gust of wind. The lizardmen freeze in their tracks, their advance halted by an unseen force. Our boy can only stare, completely lost as to what's happening. But Shift screams a warning, telling him to get down immediately. A massive, scaly tail whips through the air, bisecting a lizard man. The attack continues, sending another monster flying with a sickening crunch. The entire pack is scattered by the single, devastating blow. Talk about an overleveled pet. Shift is completely stunned, realizing what an incredible monster Arihara has tamed. Hakuro sits proudly amidst the carnage, wagging its tail like a good boy. As the dust settles, the sun rises over a distant mountain peak. With the battle over, Hakuro leads Arihara and Shift deeper into the forest. But hours have passed, and Arihara is beginning to feel the strain of their long journey. He asks Shift if they're getting further from their friends, not closer. The shapeshifter admits that while Hakuro seems friendly, its true motives are a mystery. Suddenly the wolf bolts ahead, ignoring Arihara's calls to wait. It leads them to a rocky clearing before finally coming to a stop. Hakuro turns with a low growl, its friendly demeanor completely gone. So much for man's best friend. A woman with fox ears sits waiting, admitting she was getting tired of their delay. Arihara can only stare in confusion, completely blindsided by this new arrival. She introduces herself as Nia, confirming she knows Arihara Kaito's full name. His eyes are wide with dawning horror. He doesn't need to be told. Nia confirms his fears with a smug smile. She is Lifa's long-lost twin sister. She can see the recognition written all over his face. With a smile, she thanks him for his hard work and tells him to come closer. Arihara can only stare back, completely lost. Hakuro pads over to Nia's side, revealing its true allegiance. The betrayal finally clicks. His first animal friend was working for the enemy all along. So much for that historic moment. Hakuro looks away, letting out a quiet, almost apologetic whimper. Nia is amused, realizing Arihara even gave the wolf a name. But as she calls it Hakuro, the wolf snarls back with pure hatred. Nia lays out everything she knows about him. The boy from another world, now partner to her sister, the hero. Arihara wonders how she knows so much about his past. He knows he's facing a commander and wants no part of this fight. But Nia finds him far too interesting to just let him go. She declares she'll test his power for herself. With no other option, Arihara prepares for the inevitable battle. But in a shocking twist, Hakuro lunges at Nia, its fangs bared. So much for a loyal evil minion. Arihara can only call out the wolf's name in utter confusion. Hakuro looks back, letting out a soft bark, its true allegiance now clear. Nia realizes his pure magic has tamed a wind spirit. His power is even more interesting than she first thought. Shift is stunned. A spirit? Arihara didn't even know they were real. Shift explains that for a spirit to take physical form and defy its master is a complete violation of natural law. Nia confirms she bound a wind spirit to create her familiar. She declares that a servant who defies her needs to be punished. With a sinister aura, she prepares to make the spirit disappear. But Arihara rushes forward, screaming for her to stop. In a shocking twist, Hakuro lunges and bites Arihara's arm. Even Nia is completely stunned by this unexpected move. The wolf's fangs sink in, but this is no ordinary attack. Hakuro's body begins to dissolve into pure magical light. A very dramatic way to quit your job. Nia realizes the spirit is transferring its soul to Arihara. She smirks, admitting it's a neat trick but ultimately insignificant. Arihara can only stare, feeling a new power coursing through him. He feels Hakuro's rage, a burning hatred directed right at Nia. He clenches his fist, accepting the spirit's final, desperate gift. Shift warns him that their opponent is on another level entirely. But Arihara declares he has to land at least one hit for Hakuro. Nia just smiles, happy he's finally ready to put up a fight. She discards her swords, deciding she won't even need them. A classic villain power move. She grins, promising to go easy on the little otherworlder. In a flash, she closes the distance, her fist a blur of motion. But Arihara draws his dagger, ready to meet her head-on. Nia moves like a phantom, her fists a blur of deadly strikes. Arihara can barely keep up, his eyes wide with disbelief. A single, brutal punch sends him staggering back, his breath stolen. He grits his teeth, screaming for Shift to give him more power. Shift agrees, pouring its magic into him despite the immense risk. Fueled by desperation, Arihara lands a solid blow right on her jaw. He clenches his fist, the impact a small victory in a losing battle. He follows up with a wild swing, putting everything he has into the attack. But Nia lands gracefully, impressed by his strength and reflexes. This is just a game to her. She effortlessly sends him flying, reminding him of the vast gulf in their power. Nia continues her relentless assault, aiming a powerful kick at the downed Arihara. But he knows his old fighting style is completely useless here. With a desperate cry, he grabs her leg, refusing to be her punching bag. He uses her own momentum against her, slamming the commander into the ground. Shift screams for him to finish it, and Arihara prepares to land a decisive blow. But Nia's sinister grin reveals she was just playing along the entire time. She unleashes a wave of dark energy, sending Arihara flying backward. So much for that opening. He clutches his chest, a strange, cold pain spreading through his body. Nia admits he actually forced her to use magic, impressed by his beast-like tenacity. She's now certain he has the potential to one day join the Demon Lord's army. Nia scoffs, telling Shift it doesn't understand its master at all. She looks down at her hand, stained with the blood from his last attack, and in a deeply unsettling move, she licks it clean. Arihara can only watch, completely disgusted by the display. Her eyes widen with a crazed delight, recognizing the taste of his pure magic. Our boy is horrified, realizing he's trapped with an absolute lunatic. She trembles, feeling the immense power from just a single drop of his blood. Her gaze hardens, a sudden terrifying decision made. She declares that she's going to make him hers right here and now. But Arihara screams back, refusing to become anyone's property. Nia declares she'll take him with her, even if she has to use force. Arihara recognizes the swirling energy as the same magic she used before. But a familiar voice suddenly calls his name inside his mind. He's stunned, realizing the voice is coming from within himself. His gaze falls to the arm where Hakuro left its final mark. Even Nia is caught completely off guard by this sudden development. She asks what's happening to his arm, but he has no answers. His fist erupts in a torrent of wind, a power he doesn't recognize. The voice explains it's the spirit he gave a name to, answering his call. He clenches his fist, realizing Hakuro is still with him, lending it strength. He unleashes the spirit's power, a vortex of wind erupting from his fist. With a cry, he summons Hakuro, who manifests as a massive spirit wolf. Even Nia is completely stunned by this sudden, impossible power-up. The spirit lunges, its ethereal fangs sinking deep into the commander's arm. But the massive form vanishes, leaving a tiny, grumpy-looking wolf in its place. A very intimidating follow-up. Nia just grins, thrilled by the spirit's defiance and Arihara's potential. The spirit wolf returns to its normal size, circling its new master protectively. Arihara smiles, calling out his new companion's name with pride. Hakuro looks back, acknowledging their new unbreakable bond. The spirit then dissolves, its power flowing back into Arihara's arm. Arihara stares at his fist, realizing this isn't just power but a new friend. Nia recalls the spirit's words, intrigued by this impossible bond. He roars at her, declaring that Hakuro is his to protect now. Nia's grin widens, thrilled by his reckless, defiant spirit. With a guttural cry, Arihara prepares to unleash his new power. But the commander just eggs him on, demanding to see more. A classic case of a villain enjoying the show a little too much. But just as their fight is about to begin, Lifa finally arrives on the scene. Nia turns with a smile, happy to see her dear sister has joined the party. Arihara's face lights up, overjoyed to see Lifa and Lime are safe. and Lime returns the sentiment with a full-face slime hug. He apologizes to the little slime, relieved to have it back in his hands. Arihara turns to Lifa, asking if she's all right, just as she locks eyes with her sister. The hero's face twists with rage, spitting out her long-lost sister's name. Nia just grins back, welcoming her to their very emotional family reunion. The three stand in a tense triangle, the air thick with unspoken history. But Lifa vanishes into a pool of shadow, leaving Arihara completely stunned. She reappears in an instant, emerging from the ground right behind her sister. With a furious cry, she lunges, ready to strike Nia down. So much for a heartfelt chat. The hero's blade cuts through the air, a blur of motion aimed at her twin, but Nia easily sidesteps, questioning if this is any way to greet your family. Lifa screams at her sister, demanding to know why she started this fight. Nia just smiles, admitting she had to mess with her beloved sister, the new hero. The hero can only grit her teeth, her fury boiling over. But Nia's expression shifts as if she's just noticed something. She effortlessly blocks Lifa's punch, her strength far superior. Nia taunts her, saying she'll never grow stronger if she keeps rejecting her monster blood. A very supportive sister, clearly. Lifa is stunned into silence, her sister's words hitting their mark. Nia continues, calling her a coward who's afraid of her own power. Arihara watches, realizing Lifa isn't just afraid of herself but of hurting him. The hero finally snaps, screaming for her sister to be quiet. But Arihara grabs her arm, telling her to calm down. She looks up at him, his words breaking through her rage. Nia taunts them from a distance, a smug smile on her face. She warns that relying on his pure magic has its limits. Eventually, Lifa's monster instincts will take over and devour him. A truly heartwarming family prediction. But the hero roars back, vowing to never let that happen. Nia just scoffs, calling her bluff with a condescending smile. Arihara tells Lifa not to fall for her sister's mind games. He asks about Rick, and Lifa confirms he's holding back the army. She turns to him, worried that he's too exhausted for this fight. But Arihara insists he's fine, vowing to see this fight through with her. Nia just grins, deciding she'll have to get a little serious for this 2-on-1. With a shared cry, Arihara and Lifa charge forward as a single united force. Lifa leads the charge, unleashing a volley of daggers at her sister, but Nia effortlessly deflects them, complementing her sister's aim. Arihara calls on Hakuro, wrapping his dagger in the spirit's wind magic. He leaps over the commander, aiming for a surprise attack from above. But she meets his blade with her own, impressed by his new trick. A classic case of, nothing personal, kid. The clash of their weapons sends a powerful shockwave through the clearing. Arihara is pushed back, but Nia is also forced to brace against the unexpected force. He calls on Hakuro, who manifests as a spirit wolf, to join the fray. Lifa uses her shadow powers, sliding across the ground to create an opening. Arihara calls on his familiars, ready for another combination attack. He unleashes a lightning-infused attack, but Nia blocks it with her bare hands. She seems to enjoy the sensation, a crazed smile on her face, a very healthy reaction to being electrocuted. Arihara is completely stunned. His trump card has absolutely no effect. Nia stands completely unfazed, the lightning crackling harmlessly around her. She easily parries Lifa's follow-up strike, taunting her sister's efforts. Arihara swings with all his might, trying to land a hit while she's distracted. But Nia effortlessly dodges, making their desperate struggle look like a game. Lifa unleashes her shadow swamp, a torrent of darkness surging toward her sister. But Nia just scoffs, admitting she's already seen that trick before. So Arihara summons his own trump card, a massive three-headed Orochi. Nia finds herself surrounded by the monstrous heads, but her smile never wavers. In fact, she's thrilled, calling him a surprise box full of interesting tricks. Arihara is stunned. His most powerful attack was brushed aside like nothing. He calls on Hakuro, ordering the spirit wolf to create a distraction. The wolf unleashes a vortex of wind, but Nia stands calmly in the eye of the storm. A classic case of being too cool for school. She notes that for all his power, his physical body is still incredibly fragile. Shift screams a warning, telling its master that any more magic could be fatal. He realizes using Hakuro's power is draining his magic at an alarming rate. Nia rises into the air, ready to end this little game. She smirks, deciding it's time to cool things down for them. But Arihara's eyes harden, a desperate plan forming in his mind. The commander unleashes a massive, freezing wave of mist. Arihara shoves Lifa behind him, ready to shield her from the blast. He calls on Shift, enchanting his weapon with roaring flames. The clash of fire and ice erupts in a blinding cloud of steam. A classic elemental showdown, you love to see it. Lifa can only stare, completely stunned by this incredible display of power. But the cold triggers a childhood trauma, and she begins to shiver uncontrollably. With a desperate roar, Arihara pushes back against the freezing mist. He grabs Lifa's hand, pulling her out of the blinding steam. But the effort leaves him completely drained, collapsing to one knee. Nia appears before him, impressed that he managed to block her attack. Her hand is coated in a thick layer of frost, her power still active. She follows up with a brutal kick, sending him flying across the clearing. So much for a fair fight. Lifa can only scream his name, watching him get thrown aside. Nia just smiles, telling her sister to sit back and enjoy the show. But Arihara isn't down yet, blocking another attack with his bare arm. The limb is instantly encased in ice, the frost biting deep into his skin. He grits his teeth, realizing his arm is completely frozen solid. Nia turns her attention back to Lifa, leaving Arihara helpless on the ground. She grins, inviting her sister to a one-on-one fight. A classic villain monologue moment. But Lifa's face is a mask of pure rage as she accepts the challenge. Nia lunges, her blade a blur of motion aimed right at the hero. But Lifa meets the strike, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. The sheer force of the blow sends Lifa stumbling backward, completely outmatched. She coughs, the impact leaving her breathless and wounded. With a furious roar, she refuses to back down, pushing through the pain. But Nia's attention is suddenly drawn to something falling from the sky. Nia easily blocks the strike, calling her sister's attacks artless. Her gaze is cold and calculating, unimpressed by the hero's fury. She unleashes a flurry of blows, driving Lifa back across the clearing. The hero can only grit her teeth, completely outmatched by her twin. On the ground, Arihara realizes the gap in their experience is just too wide. He tries to melt the ice, but the magical frost is stubbornly clinging to him. The process is agonizing, a scream of pain tearing from his lips. A magical ice burn. Lovely. The battlefield is a testament to Nia's overwhelming power, but Lifa refuses to surrender, her eyes burning with defiance. Nia advances slowly, savoring every moment of her sister's struggle. Nia's blade flashes forward, a blur of deadly steel. The hero can only stare, the cold metal pressed against her throat. Nia stands over her, questioning why she refuses to accept her true self. But Lifa grits her teeth, insisting she's nothing like her sister. Nia explains their monster blood makes them kin to the Demon Lord's army. The hero screams back, her defiance echoing across the battlefield. Nia feigns disappointment, lamenting her sister's wasted potential. A classic villain guilt trip. Her gaze then shifts, landing on the boy still struggling on the ground. With his arm finally free, Arihara is now her primary target. Lifa can only watch in horror, realizing she's just been replaced. With a scream of agony, Arihara shatters the ice encasing his arm. Nia stands over her defeated twin, calling her a worthless obstacle. Her expression is one of pure, condescending pity. Lifa can only whisper her sister's name, her eyes wide with horror. Arihara realizes with dawning horror that Nia intends to kill her own sister, but he refuses to let that happen, calling on Hakuro for aid. The spirit wolf lunges, but Nia easily leaps out of its path. She lands gracefully, admitting she's starting to like his stubbornness. But seeing his sacrifice, Lifa finds a new resolve to fight. She turns to Arihara, demanding he lend her his magical power. With a furious roar, she declares she will be the one to defeat her sister. Arihara can only stare, stunned by her sudden, desperate plea. But he sees the resolve in her eyes and decides to trust her completely. He gathers his pure magic, a swirling orb of raw golden energy. With a smile, he throws the power to her, telling her to take it all, and she accepts it in the most direct way possible, by eating it. Arihara panics, realizing this was a completely reckless, unplanned power-up. The raw energy overwhelms her and she collapses in agony. Nia just watches with a smug smile, intrigued by this new development. Lifa screams as the power surges through her, her body beginning to transform. But Arihara just smiles, insisting he believes in her completely. As Lifa's body is racked with pain, a dark energy begins to swirl around her. Her hands contort, her nails sharpening into vicious, monstrous claws. A guttural, inhuman roar tears from her throat, echoing across the clearing. She rises, her monster blood finally fully unleashed. A classic, this isn't even my final form moment. She remembers her past, how she always rejected this power while her sister embraced it. Nia used that same power to become a commander in the Demon Lord's army. But if her sister will use that power to hurt the people she cares about, then Lifa will finally accept the monster she's kept locked away. With a furious scream, the hero reveals her true, untamed form. Lifa lunges forward, a blur of untamed, monstrous fury. She unleashes a savage strike, her claws aimed right at her sister. Nia realizes Lifa used Arihara's magic to force this transformation, but she blocks the blow, dismissing it as a simple, mindless rampage. Nia confidently declares that her sister won't even be able to touch her, but Lifa's clawed hand grabs her arm, shattering her confidence. Nia is completely stunned, unable to believe she was actually caught. She realizes with dawning horror that Lifa is still in control. Guess this power-up came with the premium software. Lifa notes the physical changes, her hair and tail now fully manifested. She declares she has finally accepted her monster side without losing herself. Arihara watches with a relieved smile, his reckless gamble having paid off. But Nia's attention is drawn to a new threat rising from the shadows. Lifa moves like a phantom, her after-images surrounding her sister. She strikes with her new claws, a blur of deadly dark energy. For the first time, Nia is genuinely caught off guard by the assault. She blocks the strike, dismissing her sister's newfound speed. But Lifa emerges from another shadow, her attack relentless. She admits she was always worried about her long-lost sister. A classic I can fix her moment, but with more claws. Nia just laughs it off, calling her concern a complete waste of time. Lifa declares that if Nia keeps hurting people, she'll stop her by force. With a furious roar, Lifa unleashes her newfound power. She summons a storm of shadow spears, erupting from the ground. But Nia moves like a blur, deflecting every single one. The commander's calm expression finally cracks with surprise. Lifa is on her in an instant, pressing the relentless assault. The hero's monstrous strength clashes against her sister's blade. Lifa screams she'll drag her home, but Nia just scoffs at the threat. The hero declares she'll protect Arihara at any cost. Nia just grins, happy to finally have a real fight on her hands. And Arihara can only wonder why he's the prize in this family feud. The last of the magical frost drips from his sleeve. Arihara smiles, relieved his arm is finally free and ready to help Lifa. But his body gives out, collapsing from the sheer exhaustion. Shift screams a warning. His magic is gone, and fighting now could be fatal. But he grits his teeth, knowing Lifa's transformation is on a timer. The two sisters continue their furious, high-speed battle. Arihara forces himself to focus, refusing to stay down. Nia notes that her sister can't maintain this new form for much longer. A classic case of a power-up with a terrible battery life. But Lifa just roars back, her fury far from extinguished. She unleashes another wave of shadow attacks, a final, desperate assault. Nia unleashes a powerful, blinding attack of her own, but Lifa's eyes burn with a new, untamed fury. Nia meets her gaze, a confident smirk on her face. The two sisters clash in a brutal exchange of kicks and punches. Nia admits her sister is impressive, but it's still not enough. She follows up with another powerful, sweeping kick. The blow sends Lifa tumbling across the battlefield. The hero hits the ground hard, her body bruised and battered. She grits her teeth, refusing to accept this humiliating defeat. But Nia stands over her, declaring her sister's power is still nothing compared to hers. A classic "you're not on my level" speech. Nia declares she'll be taking Arihara, his power the key to their future. But Lifa roars back from the ground, screaming he is not a tool. Nia taunts her, asking if she's sure it's only his power she wants. She then admits with a blush that she's taken a liking to Arihara himself. Well, that's one way to complicate a family feud. The confession leaves Lifa completely horrified and disgusted. She struggles to her feet, refusing to even call Nia her sister. With a furious cry, she lunges, vowing to never hand Arihara over. She slams her blade into the ground, unleashing her shadow stomp. Nia is caught completely off guard by the desperate last-ditch attack. She's frozen in place, trapped by her own shadow. Lifa pants heavily, the last attack taking everything she had. Nia just laughs, mocking that it took all her sister's strength just to hold her in place. But Lifa asks if this is enough, and Nia's smug expression falters. The hero turns to Arihara, asking if he's still got some fight left in him. Arihara forces himself up, admitting he can barely stand, but he's ready. Nia can only stare, completely stunned by his unwavering resolve. He roars that he'll use every last drop of his magic for one final attack. A classic all-or-nothing gambit. Schiff gives a determined nod from its perch on his hat. Even little Lime is ready for this final, desperate push. He unleashes Hakuro's power, the wind spirit surging forward for the final blow. He calls on Schiff, who enchants Lime with a final, desperate fire spell. He combines the fire with Hakuro's wind, creating a swirling vortex of power. With a final roar, he hurls the flaming slime like a living cannonball. Hakuro's spirit form roars, adding its strength to the desperate attack. Nia can only watch in shock as Lifa struggles to keep her pinned. The commander screams, realizing she can't escape the incoming blast. He screams, pouring every last ounce of his strength into this one shot. It's a fusion of all his familiars, a beast of pure, untamed energy. For the first time, the commander's smug confidence shatters into pure terror. The attack connects, engulfing the battlefield in a massive, fiery explosion. The combined attack tears through the clearing in a massive blast. As the smoke clears, Lifa admits that was a little too close for comfort. She complains that she almost got caught in the explosion herself. But Arihara just smiles, saying he trusted her completely. His words leave the hero completely flustered and unable to argue. Hakuro's spirit form returns, welcoming its master back from the brink. Arihara turns his gaze to the battlefield, to where Nia once stood. The Demon Lord's commander lies defeated, smoking in a crater. Well, that's one way to end a family reunion. He checks on Lifa, who confirms her transformation has faded completely. They agree Nia got what she deserved for being so monstrously strong. Shiv suggests they use lime to tie up the commander before she wakes up. Arihara agrees, confirming he has just enough magic left for the task. The little slime stretches out, ready to become a makeshift rope. With the plan set, Shiv prepares to approach their defeated enemy. The shapeshifter cautiously pads toward the smoking crater where Nia lies. The Demon Lord's commander is completely unconscious, her battle finally over. But instead of tying her up, someone begins to wake her with a splash of water. A truly brilliant idea. What could go wrong? Arihara's eyes widen in pure, unadulterated horror at the scene. He screams for her to stay back, clutching his familiars for dear life. But Nia just laughs, her strength returning as she faces her exhausted captors. Nia is completely stunned, admitting this was an unexpected turn of events. Lifa and the familiars can only stare back in utter disbelief. Arihara is horrified, realizing their final, desperate attack wasn't enough. But Nia just smiles, admitting their teamwork was impressive and actually hurt her. Lifa stands protectively over Arihara, vowing to never let her sister take him. Nia's expression softens, admitting she'd love to continue their little game. But she glances away, explaining that right now it's simply impossible. Just then, a massive explosion rocks the battlefield as a new figure arrives. Talk about a dramatic entrance. It's Rick, the gold-ranked adventurer, finally joining the fight. He turns to his students, a relieved smile on his face as he asks if they're all right. Rick faces the commander, finally understanding the true nature of their enemy. His eyes narrow, furious that she's run rampant against his students. He unleashes his signature storm of blades, telling her to prepare herself. But Nia looks on. Impressed he survived the monster army without a scratch. She realizes that in her current state, she's at a serious disadvantage. Rick presses his advantage, asking if she truly thinks she can escape. But Nia's smile turns sinister, asking if he can protect them and fight her. A classic, can't be in two places at once dilemma. He glances back at his exhausted students, his resolve wavering. The gold-ranked adventurer can only grit his teeth in frustration. With a final taunt, Nia makes her escape, promising they'll meet again. They stand in the aftermath, watching the forest where Nia vanished. Arihara holds Shiv, admitting he never wants to face that monster again. Lifa's expression is a mix of exhaustion and grim determination. Rick sheathes his sword knowing they'll inevitably meet again. And so, the hero Lifa and her partner Arihara begin their true journey. Back in the city of Hendle, life returns to a fragile sense of normal. They return to the inn, their sanctuary after the brutal fight, and celebrate their survival with a well-deserved massive feast. Because nothing says we survived like a table full of carbs. Arihara digs in, the taste of victory finally sinking in. But Lifa eats in silence, the weight of her family's conflict still heavy on her mind. Arihara happily feeds Shiv, praising the innkeeper's delicious cooking. But he notices Lifa is unusually quiet across the table. The hero stares down at her food, lost in a somber thought. He asks what's wrong, wondering where her usual appetite has gone. She finally looks up, her expression heavy with a difficult choice. Lifa tells him he's free to end their partnership if he wants. Arihara is stunned by the sudden offer, asking why she'd say that. She recalls him collapsing after the brutal fight with her sister. A pretty solid reason to reconsider your career path, I'd say. He was unconscious for most of the long journey back to the city. But Arihara flexes, insisting he's fine now, while Lifa worries about the dangers ahead. She explains that as long as they're together, Nia will hunt him relentlessly. And so, for his own safety, she believes they should go their separate ways. But Arihara just asks if she's saying all this because she's worried about him. He listens to her concerns with a calm, knowing expression. He admits that when he first arrived in this world, he was terrified. His familiars listen, sensing a change in their master's tone. He recalls his decision to join the Adventurers Guild. It was a way to fight back against the fear and find his own place. A much better plan than just crying in a forest, to be fair. He remembers the moment he decided to take the test and change his fate. And now, he knows he has to think and plan for what comes next. He explains that when he was at his most anxious, he met someone else. A girl who seemed far more lost and scared than he ever was. He compares her to an abandoned puppy, someone he just couldn't turn away from. A real charmer, this one. Lifa is flustered, trying to get him back on topic, but he just smiles. He continues, explaining that ever since they formed a party, he's been having fun every single day, much to her surprise. He recalls their adventures, fighting monsters and sometimes getting hurt. But through it all, they've always been a team. Even the familiars look proud, and before he knew it, all that fear he once felt had completely vanished. And so with a confident smile, he tells her he has no intention of ever leaving her side. Lifa can only stare back, his words leaving her completely speechless. She tries to argue, but the words catch in her throat. She looks down, still insisting that something terrible could happen to him. But Arihara just smiles, telling her the solution is simple. They just have to get stronger. He declares that if they're strong enough, they can even beat Naya. A very simple solution, just get good. The hero is stunned, questioning if that's even possible. He reminds her that their last journey made them far more powerful than before. She finally agrees, his unwavering confidence starting to rub off on her. He then brings up another point, remembering the spirit wolf. He declares he has to free Hakuro, and he can't let Nia have the spirit back. Lifa is stunned, asking about this new familiar. He explains that while Hakuro is here, its true soul is still chained to Nia. He then asks if she's truly sure she wants to end their partnership. Lifa immediately denies it, completely flustered. She admits that being with them has been fun, a cure for her loneliness. With a gentle smile, Arihara declares the conversation is officially over. The hero can only look down, a wave of relief washing over her. She finally looks up with a bright smile, agreeing with his decision. The tension broken, Arihara playfully steals food from her plate. A classic move to lighten the mood. And so, their celebration continues, their bond stronger than ever. Lifa looks at him, truly grateful to have found her partner. The scene shifts to the beautiful coastal kingdom of Filgan. A massive, fortified structure stands by the sea, a symbol of the kingdom's power. Inside, a large arena hosts what appears to be a magical demonstration. A young woman stands at its center, calmly manipulating orbs of water. From the stands, a group of nobles watches the display with concern. Even a maid looks on, her expression a mask of quiet intensity. The woman's power grows, shaping the water into massive serpentine dragons. So this is the legendary summoned hero. Her eyes snap open, her focus absolute and unwavering. She unleashes the full force of her incredible water magic. The attack obliterates a stone target in a massive explosion of water. The nobles can only stare, admitting her power is more incredible than ever. The target is completely obliterated, a testament to her destructive force. The maid notes she has the greatest magical talent of any hero in history, but Shishihara just sighs, her expression somber and withdrawn. She walks down a long hall with her attendant, leaving the arena behind. The maid asks if she's angry, but the hero just asks if she looks it. Her attendant explains that the training seemed to bring out a deep melancholy. Shishihara denies it, but her hesitation speaks volumes. The classic, I'm not mad defense. She wonders aloud how her life could have possibly ended up like this, because a massive, intimidating crowd is waiting for her at the end of the hall. It's a mob of imposters, each one screaming that they're the real Arihara Kaito. Her attendant notes that this has become a daily, exhausting routine. She recalls how the kingdom announced her arrival from another world, and then plastered Arihara's name and face on posters across the land. The result was a flood of fakes, all blinded by the promise of a reward. She grits her teeth, hating this unforeseen, chaotic consequence. Later, she collapses onto her bed, completely drained by the ordeal. A hero's work is never done, especially the paperwork. She wonders if he's even in this world, thinking it might be better if he wasn't. But a part of her still desperately wants to see him again. A flashback reveals she'd always watched him from afar in their old life. She questions why her life has taken such a strange, lonely turn. But a knock at the door pulls her from her somber thoughts. Her attendant enters, holding a letter meant only for the hero. Shishihara takes the envelope, wondering who would send her a letter. But her eyes widen in shock as she sees the name signed at the bottom. She reads his words, a message filled with details only the real Arihara could know. A single tear of relief rolls down her cheek. It's really him. She turns to her attendant, her voice filled with hope, asking if he's coming. But the maid explains he's chosen to serve the hero of Hendle instead. The news hits her like a physical blow. Why would he choose another hero? A classic case of being left on red but on a geopolitical scale. The attendant suggests they could force Arihara to come if the hero wishes. The thought hits her hard. Does he not want to see her? She quickly dismisses the thought, trying to hide her true feelings. But the news leaves her reeling, a storm of emotions brewing inside. Her attendant asks if she's okay, but the hero can only offer a weak reassurance. Her mind races, trying to understand her own feelings. Is it relief or is it jealousy? The attendant can only watch, calling out to the hero who seems a world away. She realizes that in this world she's just a title, not a person. A quiet, painful understanding finally settles in. She admits to herself that she's more fragile than she ever realized. She realizes he was the only person she had left in this world. But a new painful thought begins to take root. He's found his own place in this world, a life without her. While she's remained trapped in her gilded cage, she's been playing the victim, letting others do the work. And with a flash of resolve, she decides that has to change. She looks back at the letter, her only clue to his new life. His words confirm he's in Hendle, living as an adventurer. She asks her attendant where the local guild is located. A new plan forms. If she joins the guild, she might see him again. But her attendant panics, insisting she can't join a guild when her face is so well known. Shishihara just waves it off, explaining a simple disguise will solve everything. She then holds up a finger, getting her attendant's full attention. She declares that from now on, she is to be called by her name, not her title. The maid is completely stunned by this sudden break in protocol. Shishihara then asks for her name, wanting them to be friends. A classic case of a boss wanting to be buddies. The poor attendant's brain completely short-circuits at the request. Shishihara clutches her chest, questioning the feelings stirring within her. She doesn't know if it's love or friendship, but it's a feeling she can't ignore. All she knows for certain is that she has to see him again, no matter what. She declares she will move forward, just like him, her resolve now unshakable. Back in Hendle, life returns to normal for Arihara and Leifa. More than a month passes as they continue their adventurer's life. They're greeted at the guild by Lyra's familiar friendly smile. But they've been summoned by the guild master for an unknown reason. Arihara immediately suspects Leifa, who is less than thrilled with the accusation. From the rafters, Schiff confirms that Leifa is in fact a troublemaker, a very supportive familiar. She insists she's innocent this time. Probably. The heavy door to the guildmaster's office creaks open. Belchi greets them, having been expecting their arrival. Belchi explains they have an important visitor from the Filgan kingdom. A familiar voice calls his name, and Arihara turns to see Shishihara. He can only stare in shock, stammering the name of his old classmate. She teases him, asking if that's really his first reaction to their reunion. A classic case of social awkwardness transcending worlds. He insists it's not her fault, glad to see she's safe and sound. But the hero can only offer a sincere, heartfelt apology. He remembers the summoning, knowing there was nothing she could have done. But the emotional weight of their reunion suddenly hits her, and she collapses. She looks up with a relieved smile, admitting she was worried sick about him. Leifa can only watch, her expression a mix of confusion and something else entirely. The guildmaster formally introduces the hero of Filgan, Shishihara Chisato, and her attendant. He then presents Hendle's own hero, Leifa Urgal, and her partner Arihara Kaito. Belchi explains that a meeting between two heroes is usually a grand royal affair, but at Shishihara's request, this will be an informal exchange between fellow adventurers. Arihara is stunned, and she confirms she's joined the Adventurers Guild in her kingdom. He can only ask why she would make such a drastic, unexpected choice. She admits that after reading his letter, she did it all just to see him again. From the floor, Schiff sizes up the newcomer, identifying her as the other hero from Arihara's world. A classic case of the cat judging you. Schiff then speaks, shocking Shishihara, and clarifies it's a shapeshifter, not a cat. But the introductions are cut short, as Leifa gets right in Shishihara's face with an intense stare. Shishihara offers a nervous smile, asking what the problem is. But Leifa just grunts, extending her hand for a formal greeting. The two heroes shake hands, a silent challenge passing between them. Leifa sizes her up, realizing this is the girl from Arihara's world. And Shishihara realizes this is the hero Arihara chose to protect. The two are locked in an intense staring contest, much to Arihara's confusion. He turns to the guildmaster, asking what this exchange actually involves. Belch explains they'll take on quests as a team and report back, a classic case of forced corporate team building. He hands Arihara their first joint mission, telling them to get started. The newly formed party looks over the details of their first assignment. Their first joint mission takes them to a remote, mountainous region, where they're immediately greeted by a pair of charging, bull-like monsters. Lifa is the first to react, her eyes narrowed with deadly focus. She unleashes her shadow weave, striking both beasts at once. Arihara moves in, calling on Shift to enhance his physical strength. He grabs one of the monsters by the horns, ready for a brawl. With a furious roar, he puts all his power into the next move, and executes a perfect German suplex on the massive beast, because of course he does. But he's not done yet, calling on Lime for the finishing blow. He brings down a massive megaton hammer, ending the fight decisively. The remaining beasts charge forward, a stampede of horns and fury, but Shishihara steps forward, telling the others to stand back. She summons her magic, a vortex of water swirling around her. With a single cry, she unleashes a devastating water lance. The attack tears through the monsters, ending the fight in an instant. Arihara is completely blown away, but Lifa just looks unimpressed. Shishihara asks for their thoughts, and Arihara admits she was incredible. A classic case of the support mage stealing the show. She thanks him, but her attendant notes his fighting style is not that of a tamer. Shiv explains that for a master of pure magic, this is the only way to fight. Shishihara's eyes widen, recalling that pure magic was once used for sacrifices. Lifa looks over at Arihara, a thoughtful expression on her face, but her gaze hardens, vowing she won't lose to Shishihara. A classic case of a rivalry being born. Arihara is completely lost, having no idea what she's talking about. Her frustration boils over in a comical, puffed-cheek display of anger. She begins to repeatedly punch him, much to his and Shift's surprise. The hero chases him across the field, while Shishihara and her attendant watch the bizarre scene unfold. The scene shifts to a grand castle, deep within the Filgan kingdom. A young blonde fox girl throws a tantrum on the floor, refusing to do something. She's silenced by a shoe to the face, told to shut up by an unseen figure. An elf woman stands over the crying girl, showing absolutely no sympathy for her plight. The elf woman scolds her subordinate for losing the monsters she provided a month ago, but the young fox girl insists she replenished the forces, as was her duty. The elf dismisses her, demanding she repeat the plan for her insufficient brain. Her gaze is sharp and unforgiving, demanding the girl speak now. The fox girl explains their plan, a pincer attack to conquer the Hendle kingdom. Her role is to lead reinforcements and cut off aid from other nations. The elf is unimpressed, and the fox girl accuses her of holding a grudge. A healthy work environment, clearly. The young subordinate cries out, vowing to remember this cruelty forever. The elf explains that with Hendle's fall, the Demon Lord's army gains a crucial foothold. Elsewhere, Nia recalls her fight with the heroes, wondering who's leading this new operation. The fox girl commander complains, admitting she hates her elven superior. The elf retorts that the feeling is more than mutual. A truly healthy work environment. The scene shifts back to the familiar inn in the city of Hendle. Arihara raises a glass, toasting their successful joint mission. The two parties celebrate together over a massive, well-deserved feast. Arihara asks Shishihara about her new disguised appearance. She explains it's a necessary precaution for a famous hero trying to lay low. She then gets his attention, a new request on her mind. Shishihara asks him to call her by her first name, much to his surprise. She explains it's the name she's registered with at the guild. Arihara agrees with a smile, calling her by her first name. But Lifa cuts in, telling him to drop the formal honorifics. He stammers, completely flustered by the sudden informality. Shishihara just smiles, happy to finally be on a first-name basis. But the moment is shattered as Arihara cries out in sudden pain. Lifa's hand is seen pinching his side with surprising force, so much for a peaceful dinner. He demands to know what her problem is, but she just looks away. Shishihara's attendant asks about their relationship, sensing the tension. Lifa proudly declares that Arihara makes all her meals for her. A very strange way to mark your territory. Shishihara asks if he's taming her, and Arihara can't even deny it. Shishihara's attendant asks about her relationship with Arihara. Shishihara explains her attendant is a former adventurer from the castle, but the maid admits she'd rather be back at her old job. She's stuck in this role until a permanent replacement is found. Arihara can only feel a little sorry for the reluctant bodyguard, but Shishihara turns to Arihara, a serious request on her mind. She hesitates for a moment, trying to find the right words, but Lifa slams the table, declaring that Arihara is her partner. A classic case of calling dibs, apparently. The sudden fierce declaration leaves Shishihara completely stunned, and Arihara can only scold Lifa for her bizarre territorial outburst. But their argument is cut short by a booming laugh from across the room. A massive, lion-like man raises his mug, telling them not to mind him. Arihara asks how he knows their names, and the man admits he overheard them. The innkeeper apologizes for the noise, but the stranger waves it off. He explains he was just preparing for a big job and didn't expect to meet them. He introduces himself with a confident grin. His name is Deus. Arihara and Lifa can only offer a weak, confused greeting in return. Meanwhile, on the city walls, a pair of guards spot something in the distance. A knight bursts into the throne room, delivering an urgent message to the Queen of Hendle. A massive army of monsters is marching on the kingdom, ready for war. The knight confirms the army's size, a force of 10,000 monsters. The Queen of Hendle can only stare back in utter disbelief. The captain of the royal guard, Bianca Harans, demands to know how this happened. But the queen already knows the answer. This is the Demon Lord's army. The entire throne room is stunned into silence by the impossible news. Her minister, Urine, realizes this wasn't a random attack, but a calculated invasion. The queen understands they intentionally bypassed every checkpoint to reach the capital. A classic case of ignoring all the side quests to rush the main story. Bianca scoffs, never expecting such a brazen head-on assault. With her resolve firm, the queen orders her captain to gather the soldiers at the gate. Bianca accepts the command, vowing to show the invaders the true might of Hendle. The queen orders Urine to request immediate aid from other nations. Her minister accepts the command without a moment's hesitation. The queen slumps back into her throne, the weight of the invasion finally sinking in. She can't believe the Demon Lord's army would make such a direct assault. She knows their own hero is still inexperienced. They'll need every adventurer they can get. A great time for the kingdom's champion to still be in training. But a sudden thought cuts through her despair, a spark of realization. She remembers hearing that the hero from Filgan was visiting the city. Urine's eyes widen, understanding the sudden shift in her queen's demeanor. Back at the inn, the lion-like man, Deus, finishes his introduction with a grin. Arihara and the others can only stare back, completely baffled by the interruption. Deus comments that the world has grown soft and complacent since the last Demon Lord's defeat. The massive man then pulls out a small, official-looking document. He reveals it's a simple travel permit, explaining it's how imposters have been slipping into the kingdom. So much for border security. Schiff immediately gets defensive, demanding to know who this stranger really is. But their conversation is cut short by the sound of a blaring alarm bell. A crier announces that the Demon Lord's army is attacking the city, ordering all adventurers to the gates. The inn erupts into chaos as Lifa tells Arihara they have to go now. Shishihara and her attendant agree, but Arihara hesitates, worried for their safety. But Shishihara reminds him that she's an adventurer now, just like them. Arihara's resolve hardens. As a hero she can't stand by. He agrees they'll all face this threat together. But as they rush to leave, Deus calls out, stopping them in their tracks. Instead of words, he delivers a brutal punch right to Arihara's chest. Our boy can only gasp, completely caught off guard by the sudden attack. The blow sends him flying through the inn's doors and into the street. A very rude way to say goodbye. Lifa screams his name, her voice filled with pure, unadulterated panic. The party can only stare, completely stunned by the stranger's betrayal. Deus smirks, asking if they're really leaving when a Demon Lord commander is here. Arihara's mind short-circuits. Another commander right here? The two heroes are equally horrified by the impossible revelation. His arm begins to transform, revealing his true monstrous nature. His arm morphs into a massive metallic revolver, a classic case of bringing a gun to a sword fight. Arihara can only stare, his mind struggling to process the impossible weapon. Meanwhile, outside the city walls, two massive armies face off. The Demon Lord's forces are a terrifying mix of monsters and beasts. But the Royal Guard stands firm, led by their captain, Bianca. She rallies the troops, their battle cry echoing across the field. Even Lyra is swept up in the energy of the moment. From a distance, Deus watches the display with a cynical smile, but his expression shifts, sensing something is not quite right. The monster army just stands there waiting for an unknown signal. A flare explodes in the sky, a signal cutting through the night. Gil turns in alarm, questioning the sudden light. From the monster ranks, a new commander with cat ears watches silently. A cruel, confident smile spreads across his face. With the signal given, the entire monster army finally charges forward. The Hendle soldiers brace for the impact, their shields raised. Gil can only grit his teeth, realizing they've been played. Back in the city, Deus lowers the flare gun he just fired. A classic "it was me all along" moment. Schiff demands to know what the commander has just done. Deus explains that with Hendle's forces at the gate, the castle is now completely defenseless. A cloaked figure casts a spell, a massive magic circle appearing in the sky. Deus explains, this is the second part of his grand, destructive plan. The ground suddenly begins to shake violently, catching everyone off guard. Buildings crumble and collapse as the entire city is rocked by the tremor. Civilians run for their lives, screaming in terror as the world falls apart. A massive section of the city is completely annihilated, reduced to rubble. The party can only stare down in pure, unadulterated horror. A massive chasm has split the city in two, cutting off the castle. So much for a quick response from the royal guard. They stand at the edge of the abyss, their path completely blocked. Arihara can only stare, his mind failing to comprehend the scale of the destruction. Deus explains this was a massive, coordinated spell. The army was a diversion. This wall isolates the castle for him to conquer. A classic divide and conquer, just with more property damage. Arihara realizes with horror that Rick and the others are trapped on the other side. But Leafa refuses to be stopped, declaring she'll just smash through the wall. She unleashes a powerful shadow attack, aiming to shatter the obstacle. But her magic impacts the wall with a flash, doing absolutely nothing. She lands, completely stunned that her attack was completely ineffective. Deus explains it's no ordinary wall, it's reinforced with special magic. So much for brute force. Shishihara realizes the terrifying truth. They're the only ones left to stop him. The commander just grins, summoning a monstrous beast as he welcomes their challenge. Schiff demands to know why he's stopping them, questioning if they're beneath his notice. Deus smirks, admitting he's heard all about them from his fellow commander, Naya. He gestures to the chasm, asking why he'd bother when conquering the castle would be far too easy. Arihara is completely lost, demanding to know what he's talking about. The commander reveals his true motive. He's here to kill time by fighting them, a classic villain looking for a warm-up. The entire party is completely stunned by his casual declaration of war. Deus admits the original plan was boring, but this encounter is a lucky break for him. Arihara's face twists with rage, realizing this is all just a game to the commander. But their attention is drawn back to the city as fires begin to erupt behind them. Deus's summoned monsters are already wreaking havoc, turning the streets into a war zone. The city's adventurers fight back, loosing flaming arrows into the chaos. Deus reveals he has even more subordinates already inside the city walls. Shishihara's attendant realizes with horror what he's holding. It's a teleportation scroll, a key part of his twisted game. The magic circle on the scroll begins to glow with an ominous light. The entire party is caught in the spell, unable to escape the sudden trap. A massive foot slams down, shaking the very ground beneath them. A monstrous dragon roars, summoned to block their path to the castle. A classic case of a boss summoning a mini-boss. Deus watches from a distance, his work here apparently done. Arihara can only scream in terror, realizing they're now facing a dragon. The entire party can only scream in terror at the sight of the beast. The dragon lets out a deafening roar, its eyes glowing with pure malice. Shiv screams a warning, knowing a devastating attack is imminent. But Shishihara steps forward, telling the others to get behind her. She summons a massive wall of water, just as the dragon unleashes a torrent of fire. The two elements clash in a massive explosion of steam and fury. From his perch, Deus watches with a flicker of genuine interest. So the other hero isn't just for show. The attack subsides, leaving the party shaken but completely unharmed. Lifa screams for everyone to grab onto her, a desperate plan forming. As the dragon stomps down, she uses her shadow magic to pull them out of harm's way. They land on a nearby rooftop, regrouping after the narrow escape. Arihara calls on his familiars, ready to take the fight to the beast. But the dragon is already on them, its attack shattering the roof. He leaps into the air, bringing down a massive, lightning-infused axe. The weapon connects, but the impact is met with unyielding resistance. Arihara's eyes widen, realizing its scales are impossibly tough. The dragon's eye glares back, completely unimpressed by the attack. So much for his big entrance. It retaliates with a single devastating swipe of its massive claw. The blow sends Arihara tumbling helplessly across the roof. The two heroes can only scream his name, watching in horror. The two heroes can only stare up at the colossal beast, their path blocked. Arihara gets to his feet, insisting he's mostly unharmed by the dragon's attack. But a strange, hot smoke suddenly erupts around him, catching him off guard. From the smoke, Deus emerges, telling Arihara not to forget about him. Schiff wonders if this is the magic of some new, cat-like monster. A very specific and very wrong guess. The commander effortlessly manipulates the dark energy with a wave of his hand. He hefts his massive weapon, declaring that Arihara's fight is with him. In a flash, he closes the distance, a predatory grin on his face. Arihara is completely stunned, unable to even track his opponent's impossible speed. Deus roars, ready for a good old-fashioned contest of strength. Deus brings his weapon down with crushing force, but Arihara manages to block the blow. Our boy is stunned, realizing the commander's raw strength is on another level entirely. He screams for Shift to enhance his body even further, refusing to be overwhelmed. With a desperate roar, he pushes back, meeting the commander's strike head-on. Deus just scoffs, mocking the idea that Arihara could ever hope to match his power. But Arihara's resolve doesn't waver for a single second. He declares that this is where the commander's rampage will end. A bold claim from a guy who just got punched through a wall. The commander just laughs, thrilled by the kid's defiant spirit and welcoming the challenge. Meanwhile, the two heroes are still stuck dealing with the dragon's fiery assault. Shishihara panics, realizing Arihara is trapped in the smoke with a demon lord commander. But Lifa insists that Arihara will be perfectly fine on his own. She smiles, declaring her absolute faith in her partner's strength. Shishihara can only stare, completely taken aback by her unwavering trust. Lifa turns to the dragon, deciding they'll just have to defeat it themselves. Shishihara looks down, a flicker of envy in her eyes at their powerful bond. Lifa orders the attendant to help evacuate the citizens while they hold the line. She then pulls out a mysterious vial, catching Shishihara's attention. Lifa explains it's a special bottle filled with Arihara's magic. A magical energy drink, apparently. Before anyone can object, she chugs the entire thing in one go. A dark energy erupts around her as she forces another monstrous transformation. Lifa lets out a furious, inhuman roar, her monster form fully unleashed. Shishihara can only stare, completely in awe of the hero's raw power. Lifa tells her to provide support, declaring she'll handle the dragon herself. She leaps into the fray, a blur of claws and fury against the colossal beast. Meanwhile, at the city gates, the royal guard is locked in a desperate battle. The cloaked mage from before unleashes a powerful spell on the front lines. Lyra smashes through the monster ranks, her hammer a blur of motion. Captain Bianca carves a bloody path through the enemy horde, a real one-woman army, this one. Lyra worries about the tremor, but knows they can't abandon their post. From a rooftop, the cat-eared commander notes that the two main targets are missing. Lyra looks up in disbelief at the chaos unfolding around her. A massive monster looms up behind her, ready to strike. Captain Bianca screams a desperate warning from the front lines. Lyra turns, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. But the beast is suddenly impaled by a storm of familiar blades. Rick stands over the corpse, his expression calm and collected. He scolds Lyra for losing focus in the middle of a battle. A classic case of tough love from a gold-ranked pro. She can only call out his name, overjoyed to see her mentor. Rick notes these monsters are far stronger than they expected. He realizes something is wrong back in the city and orders them to prepare for a rescue mission. The city continues to burn, a testament to the commander's destructive power. Deus unleashes a wave of black smoke, his power on full display. But Arihara calls on Hakuro, ready to meet the commander's magic head-on. The two forces collide in a massive, devastating explosion, but Arihara's attention is drawn to the civilians trapped in the chaos. He screams at the commander, demanding to know if he understands what he's done. Deus just scoffs, saying the Demon Lord's army needs no reason for war. A truly comforting corporate policy. The casual cruelty leaves Arihara completely speechless with rage. The commander taunts him, saying he has no time to worry about others, because right now Arihara is about to face a commander all by himself. Lifa tells Shishihara that her partner is still far too immature for this fight. The other hero can only watch, her own magic seeming insignificant in comparison. Meanwhile, her attendant focuses on the real priority, getting the civilians to safety. The dragon unleashes another torrent of fire, a beast that even gold-ranked adventurers would struggle to defeat. Back on the rooftop, Deus just laughs, questioning what Arihara could possibly be smiling about. But Arihara just grins back, telling the commander he doesn't understand a thing. He knows that ever since their fight with Naya, they've grown far stronger. Having a clear goal has pushed them to new heights, even if the dragon's scales are impossibly hard. But Lifa has a simple solution. If one hit won't work, she'll just hit it dozens of times. A very direct approach to problem solving. And under her relentless assault, the dragon's impenetrable armor finally begins to crack. The dragon roars in agony as Lifa's claws finally find their mark. Shishihara calls out, praising Lifa for creating the opening they needed. Arihara tells Deus that he's just a young adventurer, but he's not alone. Shishihara wipes the sweat from her brow, her focus absolute. She gathers her magic, ready to strike the weak point Lifa created. With a cry, she unleashes a devastating aqua spear at the dragon's exposed flesh. Her attendant notes this is the power of the most talented hero in history. A classic case of the support character getting a moment to shine. Deus is completely stunned, finally recognizing the hero of Filgan. Arihara just smiles, explaining that she's his friend, and that's all that matters. The commander can only grit his teeth, realizing this fight just got a lot more complicated. Schiff questions the commander, asking if he regrets underestimating them. But Deus realizes this is no ordinary summoned beast. The dragon's wounds begin to glow, its body wreathed in fire. It reveals its true form, a terrifying infernus dragon. Lifa panics, but Shishihara insists she can extinguish the flames. She unleashes a powerful jet of water at the fiery beast, but the water sizzles and steams on contact with its burning scales. Lifa can only watch in horror as the spell completely evaporates. So much for a type advantage. The dragon roars, its rage threatening to burn the entire city to ash. But Deus just smirks, snapping his fingers as if to say the show is over. But Arihara's attention is caught by a new threat from the smoke. Before he can react, he's ensnared by a pair of ropes. His familiars are ripped from his grasp, sent flying through the air. He looks up in horror, realizing he's been completely outplayed. Two of Deus's subordinates appear, holding Schiff and Lime captive. So much for the one-on-one fight. A new commander appears, taunting that a tamer without his familiars is useless. Arihara can only glare back, his eyes burning with pure hatred. From their cage, Schiff and Lime promise a world of pain for their captors, but the wolf-like man just laughs, mocking their empty threats. The new commander explains they're former bandits, far more ruthless than the battle-crazed Nia. Arihara realizes his only remaining weapon is the spirit wolf, Hakuro, but its wind magic is easily deflected by the commander's dark smoke. So Arihara changes tactics, ordering the spirit to attack the subordinates. The sudden shift in focus catches Deus completely by surprise. Arihara sprints past, using the distraction to retrieve his captured friends. The two bandits can only stare in shock as the spirit wolf lunges. A massive explosion of wind tears through the rooftop where they stood. Arihara looks back, admitting that was a little too close for comfort. But Deus just smiles, impressed by the kid's surprisingly calm decision-making. He tells his subordinates to back off, declaring that was Arihara's last chance. Arihara screams for him to wait, trying to get back into the fight. But he's already on the ground, as Deus tells him to take a nap. A brutal kick connects, sending our boy into unconsciousness. So much for that defiant spirit. All around them, the city of Hendle continues to burn. Meanwhile, Lifa unleashes her own desperate attack, the Shadow Spear. But the dark projectiles shatter harmlessly against the dragon's fiery hide. The two heroes realize they're at a complete stalemate. They're stuck on the defensive, unable to find a way to damage the beast. Lifa wishes for a massive amount of water, anything to douse the flames. The comment gives Shishihara an idea, a desperate plan beginning to form. The Infernus dragon gathers its power, ready to unleash a final, devastating attack. But Shishihara's plan is already in motion, summoning a massive sphere of water. The beast is trapped, its flames smothered by the sudden deluge. Lifa adds her own power, infusing the water with dark shadow magic. A truly terrifying combination. But Lifa panics, realizing they're too close to escape the blast radius. Shishihara confirms they're trapped. Teleporting now would just get them caught in the explosion. With no other choice, they brace for impact behind a massive water shield. The dragon roars, trying to break free with a final desperate attack. The combined magic erupts in a cataclysmic, city-shaking explosion. Meanwhile, Deus makes his escape, carrying the unconscious Arihara away from the chaos. Deus looks over at the massive explosion, noting the dragon fight seems to be over. He smirks, declaring that his own little scuffle has also come to an end. On the rooftop, Arihara lies completely still, knocked out cold. Our boy is unconscious, his face battered and bruised from the one-sided fight. His familiars are trapped in a cage, calling his name as Deus, and his men stand over him. Schiff rages against the bars, furious at being so easily captured. The subordinate holds them tight, the two familiars completely helpless. But Arihara forces himself to his feet, and even Deus is impressed by his sheer toughness. Schiff and Lime can only watch, their voices filled with worry for their master. Arihara demands to know why he's a commander, and Deus offers a final, chilling explanation. He explains the Demon Lord's army is a collection of society's outcasts. For people like them, it's all about one thing: Efficiency. As former bandits, joining the army was simply the fastest way to get what they wanted. Arihara can't believe they'd cause all this destruction for such a selfish reason. But Deus just laughs, confirming that's the only reason he needs. He lives for plunder and violence. Arihara is just a stepping stone to his desires. His subordinates agree, eager to finish the job and enjoy the spoils of war. They've heard rumors about the kingdom's beautiful queen, a truly charming bunch of villains. Deus gives them his blessing, telling them to do whatever they please. His men cheer, ready to unleash their cruelty upon the city. Arihara's head hangs low, questioning how they can laugh about this. Schiff screams in fury, calling them nothing more than scum. Deus tightens his grip, deciding it's time to end this little game. He looms over the defeated boy, ready to deliver the final blow. But Arihara's eyes snap open, a terrifying realization dawning on him. The commander lunges forward, his fist a blur of deadly motion. His familiars can only watch in horror, completely helpless to intervene. Meanwhile, the city burns, a casualty of the commander's twisted game. Lifa and Shishihara lie in the rubble, survivors of the massive explosion. Lifa pushes herself up, checking to see if the other hero is still alive. But the dragon is still active, preparing another devastating attack. Shishihara recalls Lifa's wish for more water, a desperate plan forming. She explains her magic is far more potent with an existing water source. Lifa understands immediately, her eyes landing on a nearby water pipe. With a single, powerful punch, she shatters the city's plumbing. A very direct approach to problem solving. A massive geyser erupts, providing all the ammunition they could need. Shishihara realizes Lifa has tapped into the city's groundwater supply. Lifa turns back, asking if this will finally be enough to win. Shishihara calls her a genius, but Lifa just offers a smug grunt in return. With a new source of power, Shishihara prepares her final, devastating attack. She gathers the geyser into a massive, swirling sphere of pure power. She admits there's a technique she's always wanted to try, but never could. But she believes that with Lifa's help, it might finally be possible. Lifa's eyes light up, intrigued by the sound of this desperate plan. Shishihara grins, happy to have her new ally on board for the ride. With their resolve united, the two heroes prepare to unleash their final gambit. The water coalesces around them, forming a colossal humanoid giant. The massive figure takes shape, a titan made of pure flowing water. Shishihara is overjoyed, calling her creation the water giant Hitogata. But Lifa is less than impressed with her naming sense. A running theme, apparently. But the commander's punch connects, sending Arihara flying into a nearby wall. Deus's eyes widen in pure disbelief. The boy should be unconscious. But Arihara is on his feet, his hands gripping the commander's weapon. Schiff realizes his enhancement magic isn't even active. This is something else. A brilliant golden aura erupts around Arihara, a power Deus has never seen. His eyes burn with a cold fury, vowing to never forgive these monsters. With a final push, the commander's weapon shatters into a dozen pieces. Guess the warranty just expired. Deus can only stare, completely stunned by this impossible display of strength. His shock gives way to pure rage as he roars and throws a punch. He lunges forward, putting all his power into one final desperate strike. Deus can only stare, his mind failing to process the impossible. Arihara uses the commander's head as a springboard, vaulting over him. He follows up with a brutal punch to the back of the skull. The blow sends Deus crashing face first into the rooftop. His subordinates can only scream, watching their leader get dominated. Deus struggles to his feet, questioning what is even happening. Even Schiff is completely lost, admitting it has no idea what this power is. A great time for the magical encyclopedia to be blank. Arihara stands ready, wondering about the strange power coursing through him. Meanwhile, the water giant faces off against the enraged Infernus dragon. Its fist, wreathed in shadow, connects with a devastating blow. Shishihara warns Lifa they must synchronize their breathing to control the giant. With a shared cry, the two heroes focus their combined will. The water giant grabs the struggling dragon, its grip like iron. The beast roars in fury, its flames smothered by the watery prison. With immense strength, the giant lifts the dragon into the air. Lifa declares they've got it, telling Shishihara to finish the job. From inside their watery cockpit, they prepare one final devastating blow. A very wet and wild mech battle, apparently. The giant's fist connects, a tidal wave of force slamming into the dragon's skull. The beast is sent flying, crashing through the city like a rag doll. It lies defeated in the rubble, its rain of fire finally extinguished. From inside their watery mech, the two heroes direct the final blow. With a shared roar, they demand one last decisive strike. The giant's fist comes down, a tidal wave of pure destructive force. With its purpose served, the massive construct collapses into a puddle. The two heroes are completely spent, their combined magic finally exhausted. Their creation dissolves, its form returning to the water it once was. A massive wave washes through the ruined streets in the aftermath. Lifa and Shishihara sit in the rubble, completely drained but victorious. Well, mostly victorious. The city's plumbing is shot. Before them lies the corpse of the Infernus dragon, finally defeated. Lifa turns to her new ally, admitting they couldn't have won without her. Shishihara smiles, asking if this means they're finally friends. Lifa agrees without a moment's hesitation, vowing to always help her. The two heroes shake hands, their rivalry replaced by a powerful new bond. But their victory is short-lived, as the city continues to burn around them. Back on the rooftop, Arihara stands over the defeated commander, his body glowing with a golden aura. Deus can only stare in disbelief, questioning how he has such power without magic. Schiff realizes Arihara is enhancing his own body, a feat it's never seen before. The shapeshifter explains this is his pure magic, made visible by his sheer will. But it warns that this state is incredibly dangerous for its master, a classic case of a power-up with a terrible user agreement. Deus understands. This is the power of a boy who has pushed himself far beyond his own limits. Arihara asks if the commander can last just a few more minutes. But Deus just grins, declaring that if Arihara can't finish it, he wins. Schiff confirms the commander's gamble. This power is agonizing for Arihara. Every fiber of his being screams for him to stop, to just collapse. But he grits his teeth, his resolve pushing him through the pain. He launches himself forward, a golden blur of pure, unadulterated fury. Another brutal punch connects, sending the commander reeling. Because this world, this kingdom, is the first place he's ever belonged. A pretty good reason to go plus ultra. The scene shifts to later, our boy unconscious and heavily bandaged. And in the aftermath, the people of Hendle begin to rebuild their shattered lives. A flashback to his early days, first learning about familiars. And now he unleashes a final devastating kick on the commander. He thinks of all the people he's met in this new world. He remembers everyone who has helped him along the way. And with their strength behind him, he declares it's his turn to protect them. Deus can only reel back, unable to withstand this impossible power. Arihara pushes through the agony, his resolve absolute. The commander's pride shatters along with his face. A truly brutal beatdown. He screams in denial, unable to accept defeat from a mere tamer. But Arihara stands victorious, his golden aura a testament to his will. His face is a mask of dirt and blood, but his eyes burn with defiance. He clenches his fist, declaring that he is a brawler tamer. With a final roar, he lands one last devastating punch. The blow sends the commander flying, his body twisting in the air. Deus hits the ground, his pride and body completely shattered. Arihara stands over the defeated commander as his golden aura finally fades. From their cage, Schiff and Lime cheer, overjoyed by their master's victory. The two subordinates can only stare, their minds unable to process their leader's defeat. Guess they won't be enjoying the spoils of war after all. From a distant rooftop, the cat-eared commander orders a full retreat. But as the subordinates turn to flee, a new figure blocks their path. Lifa and Shishihara confront the two subordinates, demanding they release the familiars. A pained scream echoes through the night, signaling their swift defeat. With the bandits neutralized, Schiff and Lime are finally freed. Lifa turns her attention to Arihara, who stands silently over the fallen commander. But his body is battered and bruised, swaying on the edge of collapse. He finally gives out, and the two heroes can only scream his name. Outside the city, the invasion has been repelled, the monster army in full retreat. Rick and Lyra stand among the victors, realizing they've somehow won the day. Rick smiles, knowing the kids inside the city must have done their part. But Lifa can only stare down at Arihara, her victory overshadowed by worry. And so the invasion was thwarted by the hands of two heroes and their partners. Shishihara can only look on, her face a mask of worry and exhaustion. She gently touches Arihara's face, the boy who pushed himself far beyond his limits. Elsewhere in a dark castle, a subordinate offers a groveling apology for the failure. An elven commander vows that her next attempt will not end in such a disaster. She slams her fists down, furious at the muscle-brained idiot who ruined her plan. A truly supportive manager. The young Foxgirl commander chimes in, saying she should have been in charge from the start. But the elf's terrifying glare is enough to silence any further complaints. She learns Deus was captured, but dismisses him as too stupid to know any real secrets. But she knows that when it comes to the Demon Lord, she'll be the one to face the punishment. The elf commander explains the demon lord is a complete mystery. She's never met them. Only knowing their power is beyond all reason. The fox girl commander just sighs, completely unimpressed by the lecture. Elsewhere, Nia licks her lips, shocked a commander fell just a month after her own fight. She smiles, admitting she can't wait to see Lifa and Arihara again. Back in Hendle, the long, arduous process of rebuilding has begun. Mages and craftsmen work together, their combined efforts speeding up the recovery. Two women walk through the streets, amazed at how quickly the city is healing. Magic is apparently great for urban renewal. One of them asks her friend if she's truly okay with what happened yesterday. The cat-eared woman can only offer a quiet, somber agreement. The scene shifts to the grand, imposing castle of Hendle. Inside, Lifa and Shishihara report on the battle against the Demon Lord's army. The Queen of Hendle thanks them, declaring the kingdom was saved by their actions. Lifa admits it was a tough fight, much to Shishihara's shock at her casual tone. But the Queen just smiles, having allowed the informality herself. Shishihara can only offer a humble, flustered reply to the invitation. The Queen's expression then turns serious, revealing her true purpose. She wants to honor them publicly, leaving the two heroes completely stunned. She declares their deeds should be known not just here, but across the world. A classic PR move, you love to see it. The story of two heroes and their partner will become a beacon of hope for all. Shishihara listens quietly, her expression unreadable. But Lifa speaks up, asking if they can refuse the Queen's generous offer. The unexpected question leaves both Shishihara and the Queen completely stunned. Lifa admits she feels she's still too weak to be a public symbol of hope. The Queen considers this, and Shishihara agrees, saying they're just adventurers. With a smile, the Queen accepts their decision, agreeing to handle the matter discreetly. She tells them to continue their training and grow stronger for the battles ahead. Later, as they walk through the city, Shishihara asks about Lifa's true goal. She presses further, sensing there's more to the story than just stopping Nia. A classic case of a friend seeing right through you. She teases Lifa about her feelings for Arihara, which earns a very flustered denial. She insists she's not being flirty, claiming Arihara is more like a mother to her. Shishihara just smiles, asking what would happen if she got close to him. The question sends Lifa into a complete, sputtering panic. Shishihara realizes Lifa is incredibly jealous, but completely unaware of it. Lifa can only stammer that getting too close is not allowed. She then offers to let Shishihara borrow Arihara as an attendant, a very generous and very suspicious offer. Shishihara confirms that seeing him was the real reason she came to Hendle. She worries about Arihara's consent, but Lifa insists he won't mind. But she has one very important, non-negotiable condition: no flirting. Shishihara just offers a smug, knowing smile in return. The scene shifts to the familiar inn, a quiet sanctuary after the storm. Arihara slowly returns to consciousness, his body aching from the fight. He sits up, recognizing the room as his familiars call out his name. He smiles, relieved to see them safe, but Schiff insists he's the one they were worried about. The shapeshifter scolds him, revealing he's been unconscious for 3 whole days. A classic post-power-up recovery nap. Arihara is stunned, asking what happened in the aftermath of the battle. Schiff explains that Deus was captured and the city is already rebuilding. It then asks if he's aware he used his pure magic to enhance his own body. But even Schiff admits it doesn't have a clear answer for how he did it. It tells him there's only one thing it knows for certain, and Arihara listens intently. Schiff explains that his new power is far too dangerous. If his rage had blocked the pain, his body would have torn itself apart. Arihara can only listen, the grim reality of his power-up sinking in. Schiff tells him he must learn to control his emotions to avoid a repeat. Just then, the door to his room creaks open. Lifa and Shishihara enter, their faces filled with relief to see him awake. He greets them with a smile, happy to see his friends are safe. But he notices Lifa has her back turned and asks what's wrong. He points out her face is bright red, wondering if she's sick. Shishihara's knowing smile suggests it's not a fever. Lifa's mind short-circuits, her thoughts a jumble of flustered panic. Shishihara's attendant smiles, insisting everything is fine while thinking Lifa's reaction is adorable. Lifa turns back to Arihara, glad to see both him and Shishihara are doing well. But Shishihara insists she was the one who was truly worried about him. The emotional weight of the last few days finally hits her, a tear rolling down her cheek. She apologizes for her outburst, leaving Arihara completely confused. She wipes her eyes, admitting she's just so relieved he's finally safe. Arihara and Lifa share a quiet, knowing look. Lifa suddenly remembers, declaring she has to tell everyone he's awake. A great way to escape an emotionally complex situation. He asks who she means, looking out at the familiar inn. It seems the main players in the recent battle have gathered for a celebration. The heroes of Hendle raise their glasses, a well-deserved feast for the survivors. Rick and Gil share a quiet moment, their mentor-student bond stronger than ever. Even Lyra gets in on the celebration, a moment of levity after the brutal fight. The guildmaster and the queen's minister, Urine, arrive to join the party. The innkeepers who provided them a home are here to celebrate as well. Shishihara's attendant serves the food. Her expression is stoic as ever. A bodyguard's work is never done. Arihara raises his glass, listening as Shishihara begins to speak. She explains that everyone here came together to help them, a testament to their new bonds. She admits that since arriving in this world, she's felt nothing but anxiety and loneliness. But his letter made her realize she was the one who had locked herself away from the world. She admits that she's so glad she finally came to this place. With a bright smile, she declares she's happy she got to meet them all. Arihara returns the sentiment, admitting he feels the exact same way. Even Lifa agrees, a rare, unguarded smile on her face. They all know that to protect their precious friends, they'd risk it all again. And so, Arihara looks to the future, vowing to get even stronger tomorrow.